I guess Nick thought you were only talking to me.
Yeah, well,
You didn't
you're the only
specify
one that
who.
really counts.
I
Steph.
was talking to everybody, Nick.
Oh, okay.
Who's that good-looking guy in the background there?
Don't know. He's got a pint of beer though, which is a perfect thing to have, I would say.
Hello, everybody in the chat room, and hello, Dana.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Wow.
Hi, Dana. You
That
got
was
your
amazing.
Ethernet.
Yeah, I couldn't understand why it wasn't working, and I had it plugged into the normal everything, and it just wasn't working.
Did you get it fixed?
Yeah, I did diagnostic. I actually plugged into my old computer because I have an Ethernet direct hookup, and it worked just fine. So I figured it was the adapter. So I went ahead and played with the adapter, trying to get it into different locations, which is a new adapter, and it didn't work. So I said, So I went into the internet help thingamajig in the computer and let it do a diagnostic, and it finally said, "Okay, here it is." Don't know why. It was weird. It had something to do with wow. So here I am.
Yay!
Welcome. We're glad you're here with us.
Now it delays on me for a change.
Hey,
I know. I thought I was the one running behind. Then I got here and it was just Jeff.
I was sitting here. I've been sitting here for the last 45 minutes working on this damn thing. It's crazy. So it worked out.
Yes.
Here we are.
And we see Dana's wall of underwear.
Yes. I was going to say, I meant to move that pink
you
blob behind.
Some underwear.
The pink blob behind me. No, it's just a swim buoy.
I can move the camera if you'd like, but that's
no, I like
courtesy of, isn't it Barbara Parrish who did that? Yeah.
Good old Barb. Bab. Okay, let's see. Is Barb with us in the chat room today? Anybody seen her?
I haven't seen her.
Josine Lafontaine. Tanya. Hey, Tanya. Neville. Never heard of that guy.
Bounds.
He's a bounder, that man.
He's a bounder. Get my
producer Mike Kuipers, the mayor of SQPN, and Steve Andrus, and more. Hello, everyone. We're about ready to do a show. And I guess I need to make sure. Oh, we need to do our clapping and make sure our recorders are on.
Where is mine?
I don't have my clapper with me. Am I the only one on the road? Yeah, I'm the only one that's on the road today.
Yeah.
The last marker that I used on this thing, it was a dry erase marker, but I can't get it to fully erase. It's like the ghost of episode 334 is forever on it now.
Just use alcohol on it, and not the good alcohol either.
Oh, well, I should try that.
Yeah, use bourbon. It'll
bourbon?
burn most things.
Oh, yeah. They'll take care of everything. Absolutely correct, sir.
Oh, look, there's a man pulling pints.
Who?
I didn't see that one. Oh, I need to shut up so it will stay on the screen.
There's a man pulling pints. Hello, man pulling pints. Oh, look. And there's someone who's lost.
I don't think I'm supposed to be here.
Was that you and Pip?
Probably.
You get better pictures if you get closer.
That's what they say.
Oh, sorry. Premature.
That's what he said.
So what am I supposed to say? Okay.
3, 2, 1.
No, I mean.
For the intro? I don't know.
That's your job, mate. We've got our own jobs.
Well, Dana last time said it was more than bourbon now. It's bourbon, scotch, vodka. Pretty soon we're not going to have time for the darn show because we're going to be
airplanes. You guys want to hear about airplanes and airline stuff?
Airplanes? What? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, why don't you just say an alcoholic connoisseur?
Alcoholic connoisseur.
Yes.
Well,
I can't drink tonight. I'm getting my blood done tomorrow.
Oh boy.
No drinking, no eating.
Oh, okay. Good for you. Okay, I think I have that. Okay, so let me get to my recorder. There it is, and I've hit the red record button. It appears that it is recording, and now I'm going to say, everybody ready?
Yep.
3,
Hold on.
2, hold on. Stand by.
He doesn't want to premature right here.
Sorry, I hit the record button and nothing happened.
Oh,
But now it's recording.
okay.
Sorry.
No problem. 3, 2, 1. All three of your claps were like almost simultaneous.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I heard them
like,
all at different times.
Did you? Okay.
It's much better when it all happens simultaneously.
That's what she said. And they all said. Okay. So we have that going, and I'm going to minimize this a little bit, as I like to minimize your feelings. WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy. I don't know why it always lowers the volume at the end of that, but whatever. Okay. How did that sound? Could you hear that?
Yep. Sounded fine.
Yep, perfect.
All right. And I'm looking at my script, and it's good enough, I think. Okay. Y'all ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's 13 after, we'll say 14. WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy. Airline Pilot Guy, episode 335. Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 979er in the Renaissance Harbor Place Hotel in Baltimore, Maryland. Today's show was recorded on the 9th of August, 2018. Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Get you right and he's flying by. The Airline Pilot Guy. In today's episode, aviation news. More news about aviation, your feedback, and this week's Plane Tale, handling the big jets. So, get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 335 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy show. It's an aviation podcast where, guess what? We talk about aviation and also answer your fantastic feedback. And helping me to do that is from our lakeside studio in South Carolina, the doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot, and so much more. Dr. Steph.
Hello, Captain Jeff. Good to see you this afternoon, and looking forward to a definitely aviation-filled show today. No extraneous information and ideas whatsoever.
What?
We never
can't
stray
talk
off
about
topic.
anything else?
Nope, just aviation today, and really looking forward to it.
That's not true. Also joining us from a studio in England, across the pond, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Well, hi there, Jeff. Great to be back on the show again. Really looking forward to it. We're talking about airplanes. I better get my textbooks out. I'm so used to talking about everything else, but
I have a feeling you have enough personal experience in airplanes that you can talk about it without referring to textbooks.
I don't know. There is a great book to come, though. We'll hear all about it.
Can't wait to hear about it. But in the meantime, let's introduce from his stately southern mansion. Oh, let's try that again. From his stately southern mansion in Smyrna, Georgia, barbecue master, bourbon, scotch, vodka connoisseur, motorcycle riding pontoon boat skipper and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Well, hello, guys. Great to be back and looking forward to this exquisitely dynamic aviation show today. And by the way, Nick, I went ahead and I have an aviation textbook right here. Big old one from Jeppesen, Sanderson. Instrument commercial manual. So if we have any questions, I have the ability to look them up.
That's awesome.
I've got my private pilot one right here too.
Oh, that's see, we've got all bases covered.
A previous dog of mine chewed the back cover, but it's still good working order.
We call that dog-eared, don't we?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I think it was on loan from my CFI at the time. And I sent him a picture. I was like, he said, you know what? You can have that one.
So when Steph says that her dog ate her homework, she's not kidding.
Not kidding. Not kidding.
Hey, Steph, is yours as heavy as mine is? My God, this thing, I could do curls with it.
Yeah, I mean, for just the private pilot information, there's a lot of pages here. That one's probably much larger than this one, to be honest, though.
This one has, let's see if I can get to the back of it here real quick. It has, come on, give me a page.
Aren't you glad they don't have today's show? This is fascinating.
Page numbers, it's just like and
chapter,
makes great radio.
Yeah, it makes great radio.
Oh, these are all the quizzes. That's why. That's why the pages are still in here. It has all the quiz answers and questions. So, and they're not filled out. So obviously, I never did my homework.
Where's your book, Jeff?
I was looking around.
He's got that relevant experience that he was talking to you about earlier. So
I don't. Yeah.
He could write the book at this point.
Well, the couple of books I did have in my room, they're underneath my laptop, elevating it a bit. I do have a brochure though. It's the a la carte dine-in menu for room service.
Ooh.
Here in my hotel studio.
It's very bright.
The exposure is just awful. Okay, well, forget it. Okay. It's an audio show anyway, right? So let's see. How is everybody doing?
Good.
Excellent. Next question.
Living the dream.
Any noise after Liz? No, not Liz.
Steph. Liz.
Wow.
Hi, Liz.
Liz is our producer, by the way. Hello. She's part of our crew. How you doing out there, Liz?
Hopefully she's enjoying her time away from home still.
She's on a little holiday in a beautiful place from what we can tell. And I'm sure that she's enjoying her swimming and her drinking. It seems like that's pretty much what she does up there. Which sounds great.
What else are you supposed to do on vacation?
But what I meant to say is, Steph, how have you been?
I have been very well. Thank you very much.
Good days at work?
For the most part. Yeah, no, just the usual frustrations of just dealing with the public and people. So, but beyond that, everything's really been good. All
right.
Yeah.
Any flying or anything?
No, I was just trying to think. I haven't done a lot of that recently. I need to get my butt back in the air. So
yes, you do.
Hopefully, next time we meet or the time after that, I'll have some stories of flying. So.
All right. Any APG meetups or anything for you?
I'm trying to think. Is that a trick question? I don't think so since last time. Okay. None that I'm aware of.
Okay, good.
I took part in since the last time we talked. No, just some, a really quiet, relaxing weekend last weekend, and just caught up on some sleep and rest, and got some stuff done around the house. And the weather here, actually, speaking of flying, has not been real great for flying, especially for us general aviation types. If I could talk, having a hard time with words today.
That's my existence.
Glad to know I'm not alone. But in the afternoon, we've had a lot of, just the typical in the southern afternoon thunderstorms. Some really, really crazy thunderstorms last night happened just north of Charlotte. We had some really heavy, strong winds, microbursts and straight line winds. I think the airport recorded gusts of 41 miles an hour, but just north of that, it was closer to 50. And there were some reports of even 100 miles an hour. So pretty crazy stuff out there. Nothing here at my place, so we're all good. But yeah, some pretty intense thunderstorms. I think we're supposed to be in the clear for the next couple of days in terms of convective activity, though.
Apparently, Atlanta was affected by some strong storms last night. Apparently, it was kind of a mess, messed up the schedule for Acme Airlines and probably others. Speaking of Acme Airlines, Dana, how have you been doing?
Do you want this to be a show about about the airline pilot guy or me? Because I've got a lot of stuff that's happened in the past week. Am I a captain of interest? Well, my last trip, not this trip that I just came back from, the last trip, thank God we have this exemption by the FAA at Acme. It's called the 5549 exemption for new captains. And that is, if you're a newly qualified captain, we are at high minimums. In other words, we have to add 100 feet to our minimums. So if, let's say, decision altitude is 100 feet, 200 feet, you have to add another 100 feet because I'm under 100 hours in the aircraft, or you have to add a half mile to visibility in order to be able to shoot an approach. Well, fortunately, we have this exemption, which last week, the weather in Atlanta was miserably low, heavy rain. I haven't turned the windshield wipers on the Mad Dog in a very long time, and I had to turn them on max to be able to see anything. So with this exemption, it allows me to fly the aircraft coupled down to minimums, published minimums, or do a Cat 2 auto land. So if we were not able to do that, then we would have not, on last Thursday, which I haven't been on the show since, last Thursday would not have been able to get into Atlanta because it was right down to minimums. So that was my last trip. Of course, you guys heard about the trip before that, the Columbia debacle. So, of course, the aviation gods for the first 6 months as you're a captain have a tendency of throwing a lot of challenging things at you. So this last trip I just came off of a 3-day was no exception. We landed in Raleigh, and Raleigh has a lot of taxiway closures. They told me to follow the Acme CJ 700. It was a 700. I was going to say it was 900, but it was 700. And so I followed them, and that took me past where I could access the part of the ramp that I could taxi the airplane into gate number C1. And that was AT Sierra. Well, landing right behind us was an American Airlines Airbus product there, Captain Nick. Airbus product that decided to go ahead and dump all its hydraulics right as it exited the runway. Oops. Blocked all the taxiways, and there was only one available taxiway.
What a shame.
Yeah, it took them about 25 minutes to come out there and tow the aircraft out of the way.
Oh, so really? I'm sure they could have taken longer if they wanted.
Are they still I haven't been to Raleigh-Durham in a long time. Are they still renovating that Terminal 1, the old terminal?
I think they are. That whole side of the airport is pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the newer side is where they're doing the construction, and it's right in front of the gates we need to get into. So, yeah, that's how that trip started. Then got a nice reroute. Now I'm very jealous of Captain Jeff at this very moment because I was supposed to have an incredibly nice layover in Baltimore. I almost reached out to Hillel. I'm glad I didn't because I was going to my favorite Italian restaurant, and I was flying with a fellow Bostonian. So, well, he had an appreciation for Italian. So we had all these great plans to go get Italian food at La Scala in Baltimore. And lo and behold, guess what? We get rerouted in Mini, and they for 10 minutes. So we were supposed to leave at 9 a.m. They decided to give us a flight that leaves at 8:50 a.m. And I called scheduling and said, hey, why? I mean, 10 minutes, really? So they ended up adding an entire extra leg to us. Well, our flight over to Pittsburgh was going to be a nice flight until just about top of climb, get a call from the flight attendants in the back. Hi, this is blah, blah, blah. We're in the back, and I've got a gentleman that has shortness of breath and chest pain, tightness of chest. I was, all right. So here we go. We've got already my first medical emergency. So of course, one of my briefings, briefing items specifically actually is always, if you have a medical emergency, try to get that form to me as quickly as possible so I can get the ball rolling. Especially most of our flights are fairly short. We were going to Pittsburgh, so it was about an hour and 20. I think it was an hour and 28-minute block time once we were airborne. So. Got the medical form and went through all the procedures. And what I'm going to do is, instead of me going into all specific details here, what I'm going to do is try to do a crew log. So those folks that listen to the do the Patreon, we'll get the full briefing on what exactly happened. But so summarize it up. It ended up okay. We think he may have actually had an event. We had to give him some medication per the folks down on the ground, and we landed in Pittsburgh, and everything else is normal from there. Then with our reroute, we got a different hotel in not our normal hotel in Minnie. And we were basically in the slums, not a very safe area outside. And we get to the hotel. It's a very nice hotel inside. And we're there about 2:15 in the afternoon. And they refused to check us in until 3:00. We had been up since before 4 in the morning. So, I had to get the company involved. And amazingly enough, about 15 minutes prior to 2:45, they finally came up with 2 rooms for us. And anyways, we rescheduled the van in the morning because we were deadheading instead of flying the aircraft out of Minnie back to Atlanta. And well, lo and behold, we go downstairs waiting for the van, and guess what? No van.
No van. How did I guess? How did I guess?
So I called crew tracking yet again, and got the same lady, and she said, "Oh my, you have had one hellacious." I said, "Yeah, all over 10 minutes, Sonia." So that was interesting. And then the last thing I'm going to talk, we did make the flight. And of course, again, I'll expand upon it on the crew log. And then the last thing is, I had a very on my last day, I had a very nice interaction. I had received a letter from Acme Chief Pilot's office that I need to go see them regarding a special thing they had for me. And I have a history with the specific chief pilot for the past close to 20 years, 17 years, going all the way back to my instructing days. And he's now chief pilot. And I specifically wanted to see him because I got presented my certificate of command and also my engraved wings. So they engraved my wings and also put my name and the date of becoming a captain for the first time. So it was really neat. So that's my life in a nutshell. But I will, I promise that I'll go ahead and get a crew log recorded and get everybody up to date on all the specific details involved with everything that I went through the last, especially this last trip.
All right. Wow. Quite a lot to talk about. That's fantastic, and congratulations on your command certificate.
Yeah.
Speaking of chief pilots, for most of my career, which is coming up on getting close to 30 years now at Acme, most of the time I had no idea who the chief pilot was because we don't really interact that much with our supervisors and this type of job.
You hope not to anyway, right?
Yeah, you don't really want to. But I remember it was several years back, probably more than 10, that I heard this name, and I recognized the name because he was sitting with me in the back row of my initial training at Acme Airlines. I think he's like 3 numbers junior to me, and he was the Atlanta chief pilot. And I thought, oh, I know who that is. He was in my class. Really nice guy. And then he moved on up through the chain, the management chain. And for the last several years, he's been I think they call it the assistant VP of flight operations, just under our top guy, Dana, who just sent out a letter saying that he was going to be stepping down. And
yes,
my friend and fellow classmate in my initial training at Acme is now going to take over as the senior VP of flight operations at Acme Airlines. So, wow.
And I have something unique. That certificate is signed by both who you're talking about and the person that's leaving. So that's probably one of the last, not the last, but it'll be among the last certificates ever signed by those 2 guys. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a really nice gesture, actually, getting all that stuff. We don't get anything like that.
I don't remember getting one of those certificates.
Like, hey, go fly the airplane now.
I'm gonna run away for a minute while Nick goes ahead and says things, but I'll come back. I'm gonna show the engraving, and then I'll blot out not blot out, but I'll block
your
out
thumb.
the area. I block out the area that is.
He's gonna take a Sharpie to it and just
Sharpie and to identify it. But I'll, for those that watch the show, I'll go ahead and then if you YouTube it too, you can see what the certificate and the wings look like.
That was a bad idea.
I'll be right back.
Well, you do that. Nick, you're on, man. What have you been up to, sir?
Well, nothing really except study and more study. I'm trying to, do my best to get back into the swing of things with a simulator tomorrow and the next day. So that will kind of bring me up to recency with landings and simulators. And then I'm going to get a training trip with a training captain, and then another trip which will be an assessment of competency. And assuming all that goes smoothly, I will be back into the seat and flying the line as normal. That won't probably happen till middle of next month, since I've got time off at the end of this month. And oh look, I'm back in quadruplet. Isn't that marvelous?
You do that on purpose. Like, I just want to see how many times I can see myself.
Ah, there you go.
In the
Well, I
picture.
don't know how often you'll see yourself. Myself, of course, is something different. Yeah, so all that's happening. It'll all occur. But the only sort of hiccup is, having got through one series of medical problems, I do have to go back for an eye exam, because they spotted something a little bit dubious in one of my eyes in my last checkup. They said, come back in 4 months. I've got to go back and do that in a week, and we'll just see what that might, if it has any ramifications or not. So my fingers are crossed for that. My life at the moment seems to be just one medical hiccup after another. But like I said, I've only got a year to go as of next month, 1 year to go. And so, yeah, but who's counting? Exactly.
Not Nick.
No.
Definitely not Nick. How many days?
I haven't got my app here. Oh, yes, I have. Hang on a minute. Give me a moment. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
I'm surprised you just didn't know that number off the top of your head. I thought you woke up in the morning and checked it every day.
Well, after nearly 6 months without actually going to work, I wasn't actually getting terribly concerned about it.
Well,
exactly.
I'm looking at the chat room conversation, and Lane Street says, "Is Nick a pilot too?"
Yeah. All right, 395.
Ooh. Yep.
We've broken the 400-day barrier.
Woohoo! Woohoo! All right.
Wow.
Crazy.
Well, sorry to hear about your medical issues. I'm sure that you'll get those resolved soon, and you'll be up and flying in no time.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Get an Atlanta layover. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Let me know in advance too. Make it on a weekend.
Sure. Unfortunately, it's New York is my next trip. I don't know what I'll be getting the month after.
Well, I'm just saying, those are my requests.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. It looks like Dana now is back with us, and he is showing something to his camera, and it's obviously the certificate of command, Captain D.S. Colton. And there's some masking tape on that, Dana.
Well, it's actually sticky notes.
Oh, okay.
I use that way it would not be permanent, because I am going to have this framed.
Yes, as you should.
My wings right next to it. Let's see it.
There you go.
See it engraving, maybe?
Yep.
Very nice.
You can see the engraving has now the date is not exact, but it is that month.
Close enough.
It was the actual
engraved wings.
Maybe you can ask for a set now that they do that.
Chef. Are you jealous, Chef?
No, I don't care.
Yeah, well, it's the day and month 30 years later to the day from the day I graduated from high school. That was crazy.
Very nice.
So,
all right. Well, yeah, as Steph has mentioned and Dana has mentioned, the weather in the South in the United States this time of year, especially in the afternoons and evenings, gets kind of crazy. I left on a trip. What day was that? Tuesday, I think. And a 4-day trip that I'm on now. And the first day I was rerouted as well. It was supposed to be just up to Pittsburgh and back, and then a nice short little hop over to Birmingham for a very nice long layover there. And we were en route, and we got the message regarding our reroute that said, well, you're not going to take that nice short little trip over to Birmingham. You're going to fly now to Detroit. And then after that, you're going to fly to Philadelphia. So we're going to add another leg, and these are longer legs to your day. But, that's the way it works out sometimes. Sometimes you win some, and sometimes you lose, and was on the losing end of this stick this time. But we got into Philadelphia not too late, late afternoon, and had a nice layover at our hotel there. Very nice hotel called the Warwick.
Is that near Rittenhouse area?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, it's a nice part of Philly.
That's a great part of Philly.
Yeah. And next day we got back on track, flew to Atlanta, and then picked up the Atlanta to Buffalo, and that now put me back on the scheduled trip. And I'm so happy that it worked out that way, because I had planned to meet. Oh, before I do that, I should mention the previous Saturday, over the last weekend. I think I actually got home from my last trip on Saturday, and that evening I met up with an APG community member. Nick Chico contacted me and said that he was going to be in town. He is flying, doing some survey flying. And he said he was going to be in the Atlanta area for a couple of weeks, and was wondering if I might be available to get together. And I said, well, yeah, over the weekend, that would work out for me. So we decided to meet up in a place kind of halfway between where he was flying. He was flying out of Gwinnett County Airport and where I live. So I kind of looked at the map and said, looks like Duluth is about halfway between the two of us. And
Minnesota. Yes.
Duluth, Georgia.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, that's the Duluth, Georgia is not quite as famous and well renowned as the Duluth, Minnesota, I guess. But it's a northern Atlanta suburb, and so we met up at Pure Taqueria, and we managed to record a little something here. So why don't we play that? I'm here with APG community member Nick Chico.
That's it.
Yes, I got it right. And we have just finished a wonderful meal at Pure. That's a capital P, capital U, capital R, capital E. I'm not sure why it's all capitalized, but Pure Taqueria. And we had some great Mexican cuisine, and we had a couple beers, and of course, as we always career as a pilot, and he is here in the Atlanta area on a special survey mission. And he said, hey, Jeff, I'm in town next couple of weeks, and if you have a chance, let's get together. So here we are, Saturday night in Duluth, kind of a suburban area of Atlanta. Very cool little place, a lot of great little restaurants. And yeah, I'm going to let Nick say something to you all.
What's up, APG crew? This is Nick Chico, standing next to Captain Jeff outside of a really nice taco restaurant. Just wanted to say what an honor it really was to finally meet the man behind the mic. Wanted to give a shout out to Captain Nick, Captain Dana, and Dr. Steph. Hope to be leaving you guys some feedback soon, but would highly recommend if anybody is in the area of Atlanta and listens to this show. It was really great to reach out to everybody and speak with Captain Jeff. We were really, really lucky to have like a really awesome night out. And, again, I couldn't be happier. It's been a really long time coming, and hope to talk to you guys soon, but I'm going to give the phone back to Captain Jeff, because I know he's been up since 3:30 this morning. So talk to you guys soon.
All right. Yeah, as you said, if you ever see that I'm going to be somewhere and it works out, I always enjoy it. As I've said so many times before, best part of doing the show is getting together with the community and hearing everybody's stories. And I'm just so excited for Nick. You're just starting out, like some other pilots that we know in the community that have flown survey kind of jobs, and are moving their ways up through the career ladder. And I'm just so thrilled for Nick and really enjoyed spending time with him. And we hope to hear, as he said, some audio feedback and some more information about how he progresses through his progression. So that's stupid. Progresses through his progression. Yeah. Oh, well, that's what happens when I've been up for a long time and have had a couple of beers, I guess. Anywho, looking down at my phone, and yes, I did hit the record button. I'm so happy. And now I'm going to kind of go into my car and drive home. And that's about it. So say goodbye, Nick.
All right. Take care, everybody. Nice talking to you guys.
All right. Back to you, Jeff. Well, thank you, Jeff. Nick really missed that opportunity. I threw up that softball. Say goodbye, Nick. He didn't say goodbye, Nick.
No, I was desperately trying not to interrupt you in mid-flow. I wasn't that rude.
Nick's just starting his flying career. Not this Nick, the Nick that I was with in Duluth.
A tale of two Nicks, one at the beginning of the career, one at the end.
There are actually a lot of Nicks in this community.
There are.
If you're watching the video, I was putting up a couple of photos of that I did not take, but that bar is the spot that we were. In fact, the two chairs that are empty is exactly where Nick and I were sitting and enjoying our tacos and beer and conversation. And a very nice little place. If you're ever up in that area of Atlanta, you should check it out. So it was a wonderful time. It was nice meeting you, Nick. If you're listening right now, he said that he has a lot of time to listen to podcasts while he's droning around taking pictures in the sky. So I thought that was pretty neat. And it won't be long before you know it, he'll be flying the airlines, I'm sure. So. Okay. So now back to my trip. Made it to Buffalo yesterday, and I arranged to meet up with somebody that a lot of folks know in the APG community. Her name is Tiffany, and I've known Tiffany for many years, going back to my Catholic podcasting community days. And so it was nice seeing her. It had been about a little over 3 years since we'd seen each other in person. But we've been keeping track of each other's lives since then. And as I said, it was really nice to see Tiffany, and recorded a little bit of audio. Now, I'll warn you that I had my phone. It was another phone recording. It was a little windy, and I didn't have a wind screen for my phone microphone. So bear with the first part of it when we're in the windy area of the streets in Buffalo, New York. Here we go. What was that show called? The Streets of San Francisco. Remember that? Yeah, it was probably before you were born.
Well, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's windy too. They probably can't hear us, but we're walking the streets of Buffalo, New York. I'm here with Tiffany, and we just enjoyed a wonderful lunch and conversation at Dinosaur Barbecue in Buffalo, New York. I'm here on a layover. Tiffany saw I was going to be here. She said, let's get together, have lunch. And that's what we just did. And we're walking back now to my layover hotel. And I believe you're walking toward the train. You're going to catch a train back up to your neck of the woods, right?
I am. Hello.
That's all you're going to say? Hello? Say something.
Good barbecue. What did we have? We had pulled pork, chicken.
Brisket.
Yes. Brisket.
Ribs.
We had wings too.
What do they call those? The tomato thing. Fried green tomatoes.
Yeah.
And we had like a sample plate of appetizers, deviled eggs, chicken wings. We had about everything they had on the menu.
Yes.
It's good. But as I always say, the best part of it was just talking. And we're crossing a street. We're jaywalking.
We are. Yes.
Uh-oh. Are they strict about that here?
No.
Good. Anyway, so is this the train that you catch?
Nope. I need the other direction.
Yeah. And where do you go?
Right.
Over this way? Okay, we'll walk over there. Still have a green light. Anyway, yeah, it was a great time. Had a wonderful food and some good beers too.
We did.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted Tiffany to say hello to everybody in the community.
Bye, everybody. Nice to chat with you.
Bye. And if you're watching the video, that's a photo that our waitress took of us seated at Dinosaur Barbecue in Buffalo. It was a really good meal, and we spent several hours talking with each other, and it was a lot of fun. All right. I guess that's it for me. Day 3 right now. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and Dana, you said that you were about to contact HI11E1 to get together. I don't think he's here in town. He said that he was kind of bummed that he was going to be out of town when I was going to be here. So, oh well.
Well, didn't work out anyway. So
yeah.
Say that.
Okay. Well,
I'm just impressed at all of the food that you guys consumed, or at least.
But it was like
tried.
little small portions. So it was like a sampler plate. A lot of that stuff that she was talking about, or we were talking about, and then the plate with the actual meats on it were, I think they call it the tres niños or something like that, like 3 small portions. So didn't really eat a lot, actually. But I am hungry too, Tanya. She's in the chat room saying, "You're making me hungry."
Yes.
My stomach's going to start growling, I'm sure. Oh, okay.
Go to La Scala.
Oh, yeah.
Done with the show, go to La Scala.
All right. Well, might just have to do that. Okay. So tomorrow I'm home, one leg home, hopefully, from Baltimore to Atlanta, kind of a gentlemanly showtime in the morning, 7:30, and get home before noon. And we'll call it quits for this particular trip. And with that, unless anybody has anything else to say during our intro portion of the show, let's move on to the coffee fund.
No.
All right.
No.
Let's do it then.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the driver and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right. The Coffee Fund is your way as part of our community, if you have the financial resources to do so, to contribute money. And we use that to offset the costs of doing our show, and also for helping us with our meetups all around the country, actually all around the world. And let's see, since the last show, we have a couple of folks that use the classic version of the Coffee Fund. The music from completely stopping. I have to hold my thumb here on my screen. We have Max Nunn and, have you heard of this guy? Fred Sampson? Well, he's one of our contributors via the classic Coffee Fund, part of our Coffee Fund cadre.
Is Fred still alive? Haven't heard of him.
Apparently so.
For ages.
Yeah. So I have evidence of it. He made a contribution to the fund.
Excellent.
Maybe he felt bad about not showing up at any of these meetups lately. So, let's see, Patreon is the other way that you can join the Coffee Fund cadre, and that's patreon.com. You can become a patron of the show. And since the last episode, we have exactly 0 new patrons. Oh well. So if you want to learn about the Coffee Fund, head over to airlinepilotguide.com/coffee, and you can find about our 2 different methods, the classic fund method and the Patreon method. And for all of you who have contributed recently and in the past or ever, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. It really keeps us going. And, remember, we have some big things planned for Oshkosh next year. So we need to, as we said, we need to change it from Coffee Fund to RV Fund, I think. Or actually, I'm not really sure that's what we're going to do or not. But we've had some suggestions from folks about some other options for our presence at Oshkosh next year. So we're gonna look at all those, weigh all the advantages and disadvantages, and see which one works best for us. So that's it. The Java Jive stopped quite some time ago, so I guess now it's probably time for me to push this button here.
Stand by for news.
Okay, during our last show recording, in the middle of it actually, this incident occurred. An Aeromexico Connect Embraer ERJ 190, registration X-Ray Alpha Golf Alpha Lima, performing flight 2431 from Durango to Mexico City in Mexico, of course, with 97 passengers and 4 crew, rejected takeoff from Durango's runway 3 at about 3:15 in the afternoon local, but veered left off the runway and overran the end of the runway and burst into flames in viewing distance of the airport's apron. The aircraft was destroyed. There were no fatalities, and several people did receive injuries, however. There have been, and I'm sure that many of you have seen various videos from this incident, including some taken from inside the airplane. And in fact, maybe all of them are from inside the
There
airplane.
were at least 2 different ones from inside the plane that I saw.
Yeah, and that kind of gave us a kind of an idea of what may have happened. Apparently, as they were beginning their takeoff roll, there was a pretty strong, some strong convective activity going on, and a cell. In fact, one of the videos that I saw had a security camera view of and a time lapse view of a cell making its way across the city and over the airport. And apparently, if you look at both of the or a couple of the videos from inside the cabin of the airplane during the takeoff, you can actually tell where the airplane on the runway is kind of going through that cell. And then apparently, or maybe, I don't know, they're still doing the investigation, but it certainly looks to me like that weather may have played a significant role in this crash, and they perhaps hit a what do they call it, a microburst or something that forced it back down on the runway pretty violently, enough so that both engines came off the wings of the airplane. And there was also some video of people actually, kind of running away from the airplane, and some of it's, kind of hard to listen to, people crying and people kind of dazed and everything else. So, yeah, so that's what we know so far. I don't know if there was any other more up-to-date news, if they've been able to investigate or analyze the boxes, the flight data recorder or the cockpit voice recorder. Do you all know?
I haven't seen anything, Jeff.
I haven't seen anything either. I am looking at the METARs here, though.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, the wind looks pretty benign.
Mm-hmm.
So that I don't know what they were, it does say thunderstorm, and that it began at 13 minutes after the hour. So
have you had a chance to see the video from inside the airplane?
Yeah, I did look at it. It looks really, really dark out there. So I don't know. I mean, I doubt that down in Mexico they have the wind shear,
low-level wind shear warning
low-level wind shear advisory system. I doubt they have it. So,
yeah,
I'm just looking at the METARs, and if I was looking at the METARs, I'd say, okay, wind 0703 knots, 7 miles, thunderstorm. So I would turn on the radar myself and take a peek at it at the end of the runway and see what it looks like. If I see, green, maybe I'm okay. But, it's really no way to tell based on these METARs what was really going on.
Mm-hmm. No, you can't from the METARs. But as you said, Dana, I mean, that's what all of us do. You go into position, you have the radar on, you're scanning your departure path and looking to see if there's any significant weather there. And maybe I guess they made the decision that this particular cell that was clearly there, and I'm sure they were painting, perhaps they thought that wasn't significant enough to wait for the cell to pass over the runway, and they proceeded with their takeoff. So again, this is all speculation. We haven't heard anything official.
And I guess even further speculation. I don't know that you read this part in the end of this article about the ground observers reporting that the engine or the aircraft suffered an engine failure right at about V1. And actually, I thought it went pretty straight off the end of the runway, but I guess they said it veered to the left off the runway.
And
the
who
airplane.
knows,
So
what,
who knows?
what reason the engine failed. Perhaps maybe there was so much rain and whatever
Exactly.
coming out of that storm that it could have ingested enough to fail. I don't know.
Hail.
Yeah.
Hail.
Who knows?
But it is indicative of someone who seems to have pressed on for a takeoff when the conditions obviously weren't suitable. How much information he had about that, I don't know. But,
We're not laughing at what Nick is saying. Nick has a picture of Jeff up behind him right now on the video. That is just
come on. Come on.
I was
Cross-eyed
trying
Jeff.
so hard not to laugh while he was having that very serious commentary about this.
I wasn't looking at the
accident.
video, and I'm thinking, why is Dana laughing? And
Well, no one who's
I couldn't hold it. I'm sorry.
I didn't know why he's laughing either. And when he started laughing, I started laughing. So sorry for interrupting your very serious commentary there,
Yeah,
Nick,
I
on the
love
very
the photo.
serious
It's
story.
Nice. Was that over
It's
at Nigel's house?
all Jeff's fault.
I think that's what Jeff looks like when he looks at the radar and thinks about what he's about to do. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. So I hate to say it, but I think there is an element there of perhaps a bit of press-on-itis, trying to stick to a schedule, and perhaps fingers crossed, hoping the weather wasn't going to be as bad as it was, or perhaps it just didn't look. But whatever, it seems to be a pretty violent bit of storm, and personally, I'd have been much happier just to taxi off the runway and sit and wait for 20-30 minutes, let it drift away, and then have another go. There you go.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I wonder how many legs that day they had done, and whether
lots of mitigation probably.
Yep, and then of course, was this a go home freedom leg? These are go to the hotel for an overnight. These are all the questions that could be possibly coming into play here.
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully we'll learn more from the investigation to see exactly what occurred here. But all right, moving on. I guess we can move to the second item in our news folder. The moment Ryanair passengers escape on emergency chute after a phone explodes minutes before takeoff. So I guess this is video of the dramatic moment that panicked tourists on a Ryanair holiday to Ibiza slid down emergency slides after a passenger's mobile phone battery exploded and caught on fire, I guess. Holidaymakers could be seen falling over each other in a bid to get away from the aircraft after the inflatable chute was activated. The drama happened around 5:30 p.m. in the port as the packed plane prepared to take off for Ibiza. No one needed medical attention, although some passengers are said to have suffered slight burns as they went down the emergency chute. So, rubber burns, I guess.
Well, some of them, they're going on holiday to Ibiza, where it's warm, presumably. There's some of these pictures, passengers are wearing rather short shorts and things like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make for a...
Like it wasn't a big jet with a really long slide, because that would have been nasty.
Yeah.
And apparently this is in our news folder because, number one, it kind of points out how crazy it can be to see an actual emergency evacuation, and the fact that people are trying to quickly get off the airplane, and that sometimes means that one or more people may still be on the slide as you're starting down the slide, and this is not a rather long slide. It's off of the 737, and you might hit people on the way down, or you may be one of the people hit in the back by somebody coming down the slide behind you. But that's just the way it is. It's better to get you off the airplane as quickly as possible and away from danger. And that sometimes means, as we mentioned so many times on this show, that's a tough decision for us captains to make when we decide to execute an evacuation, because we know that there are people going to get hurt, at least in some minor way, and sometimes even major injuries occur during these evacuations. But then, of course, the pièce de résistance, the people coming out of the jet with their luggage. Yay, people.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah. And looking at this slide onto what you're saying, Jeff, I mean, I counted 6 people at the bottom of the slide piled up with one more on the way down the slide.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's crazy. All 6 people on the slide.
Yeah. They're like stuck at the bottom with people coming down behind them.
Yeah, it's
like get off the side, move.
And then, of
move,
course, the guy
move.
that's taking the photo, the video, instead of helping the passengers off the slide, he's out there taking
I'll
a
just stand over
video.
here and document for social media.
Oh well. Did you see the video after the fact of the actual fire of the phone?
No, I didn't. What was that like?
It was very, it was very minor. It was like, really? We did an
Underwhelming.
evacuation for very underwhelming. But that's one of those things. Again, now we're up in the cockpit. The cockpit door is closed. We're relying on information from our cabin crew as to what is happening. There's a fire. You're trying to figure out in your head, okay, what a fire? Oh, we need to evacuate. Not knowing and not seeing that this is really kind of a small, almost a non-eventful. I mean, there was some flame coming from the thing, but we have, procedures now and devices on airplanes to help us deal with and cope with these kind of things. And if you ever see look for the video of the actual phone battery catching on fire, and you'll see, maybe we shouldn't have done an evacuation. But again, that's second guessing, and you really can't know exactly the extent of what's happening in the back of your airplane. You have to rely on communication from your crew.
Yeah, and that is often the problem. I mean, I think we probably got a much better and clearer idea of what is worth evacuating for and what is not. And unfortunately, the cabin crew don't get that kind of depth of training or experience usually.
Right. So I've noticed that the selection of pictures that Nick has chosen to display right behind him are all me either making faces or drinking. I did a lot of drinking when I was in the UK, that's for sure.
He's so good with his timing on his pictures, really.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
very flattering. Thank you.
But yes, there you go. No problem at all. Another pint, Jeff.
Yes,
there
why
you
not?
go.
That pretty much sums up my time in the UK.
It's a
Another
very
pint.
good thing that Jeff had his liver transplant scheduled before he left the States, because he'd probably still be on the waiting list for the replacement.
All right. Anything else to say about the Ryanair evacuation?
No,
but you
dress
can bet there'll be
appropriately
lots of more cases.
and don't take your stuff with you.
Yeah.
If you've got to get off the plane.
Let's see if I can find my sound effect for this. I should have looked at this beforehand, but it's the one where the guy says, "Brilliant."
I thought you were looking for a sound effect for this next one.
Yeah, that's what I am looking
okay.
for. See?
Darwin Awards?
Yeah.
I thought you were looking for the Bad Boys theme.
Well, I could do that as well. Yeah, I should be able to find that one, right? Let's see if I hit B, what happens. Nope, that's Bell.
Bell. You could say ding-a-ling.
Yeah. Well, just imagine the Bad Boys music in the background.
Bad boys,
Sure, why I
bad
can't
boys.
find
What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Bad Boys.
Bad
Okay.
boys.
Thank you. That's even better than the original. Thank you, Dana. So this is an article from the Texarkana News. And a man was arrested at the Texarkana Regional Airport on July 4th, allegedly told investigators he intended to fly a stolen plane to a rap music concert in another state. Asked about his lack of training as a pilot, Zamarkius Devin Scott, 18, allegedly told the Texarkana, Arkansas police that he didn't believe there was much more to the task than pushing buttons and pulling levers, according to a probable cause affidavit used to create the following account. It was about 2:30 in the morning when airport security personnel contacted police about seeing a man jump a fence and attempt to enter an American Eagle twin-engine jet. By the time officers arrived, the suspect, later identified as Scott, had gotten onto the small commercial plane and closed the door behind him. When officers shined a flashlight into the plane's cockpit from outside the jet, they could see a man sitting in the pilot seat with his hands below the window and out of direct view. Fearing for their safety, an officer drew his weapon and ordered the man to keep his hands up where they could be seen. "Keep your hands up where we can see them." That was actually real audio from the scene. When the suspect turned his gaze toward the officers, two of them allegedly recognized Scott from past encounters. A serial violator. Two of the three responding officers got the plane's doors open, while the third continued to monitor Scott until he could be taken into custody. On Monday, Chief Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Chuck Black formally charged Scott with commercial burglary and attempted theft of property with a value greater than $25,000. Yeah, a lot more than $25,000. So anyway, he's being held in the Miller County Jail with a bail set at $25,000. I was hoping there would be a little bit more information here. If maybe he was some kind of a maintenance technician or something and knew something about airplanes, or maybe a student pilot, but apparently none of those apply in this case. It was just a dude that thought all you have to do is get inside the cockpit of an airplane and hit a few buttons and the thing will just magically do its thing. That's
how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job we hide that takeoff button, isn't it?
Well, main man Micah makes a very good point. Thank God it was, I don't know what, obviously if it's a regional jet, it wasn't a Boeing either, but it wasn't an Airbus. Airbus is designed to be operated by idiots. So I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I'm really only kidding.
Now you can't take that back down. So you're just public enemy number one now.
That's okay. When he starts flying the
gird
Airbus,
your loins, young.
Yeah, I am going to go to the Airbus. Anyway, shake it. I'm never going to a Boeing. It's going to be an Airbus.
Let's play nice now. Let's play nice. But that does say something about the state of the public's understanding of what our jobs are as pilots.
Well, obviously, if you guys can be replaced by, automation completely,
obviously,
how hard could it be?
I mean, it needs to be one of us. There's only one of him. He's just got to find the right button.
Or someone on the ground remotely, just monitoring things, making sure
you make good points, stuff. You make good points. Mm-hmm. Okay, continuing on to D. TSA is considering eliminating screening at smaller airports. And wait, I have a note from our producer. Please see an update to this news item at the bottom. The TSA is now saying they are not pursuing this plan. Well, I did hear this in the mainstream media and other cable news sources that the FAA was apparently seriously considering stopping security at some smaller airports that actually service, Part 121 airline operations. And when I heard that, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Do we not remember September 11th, 2001, where the hijackers purposely picked smaller airports because of the fact that they thought that the security would be more lax? And I think terrorists boarded or cleared security through our main man Micah's airport, Portland, Maine. And then they flew from there to Boston. And
well, the problem is once you're on a regional carrier and you end up at a hub city, if you're not coming in from an international destination, you don't have to re-clear security.
Nope.
You're just in the terminal with everyone else.
Yeah, so I'm thinking to myself when I'm hearing about this, thinking how they can save a little money by doing this, I'm thinking, I don't think you really understand, how ridiculous this whole idea is. And then here, the article at the bottom of the article, thank you, Liz. TSA sources confirmed to CBS News' Chris Van Cleve that the agency has no plans to drop security screening at 150 small airports. The proposal mentioned in a pair of CNN reports was never under serious consideration. It was, the sources said, just part of an annual budget exercise that assumed a worst-case scenario for the 2020 budget.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little backpedaling, I'm sure. What would they believe if we told them that we were just kidding, playing?
No, it's just, you got to plan for, worst-case scenario.
Yeah.
That's a pretty bad case scenario.
Yeah. I don't even know why that's even a scenario to consider ever. So
sounds like a bit of fierce backpedaling to me.
Yeah, I think so too. Covering their bases, so to speak.
Yeah, just another pencil pusher trying to save a buck.
Yeah. And not really understanding the practicality of what they're considering.
No, an idiot.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
The Boston boy saying how it is.
Yep. And we appreciate that perspective. And I'm not being facetious. American woman dragged off San Francisco bound flight from Seoul. This lady was a in quotes here, self-upgrader, forcibly removed from Korean
Yes.
class. An American woman was forcibly removed from a business class seat on a Korean Air flight bound for San Francisco International Airport last week, according to various sources. There's a video of the incident posted on the Korea Jungang Daily YouTube page. The original video, now disabled, was not pixelated. It was more dramatic. So I guess they have a pixelated version on there now, I guess, to protect. Anyway, Korean website allkpop.com reports that the woman who originally booked an economy seat sat down in the business class seat instead. The woman refused to move and caused a disturbance when the flight attendant told her, "You have to sit in your designated seat." In the video, you can see the woman seated in the last row of business class in an aisle seat in which she reportedly upgraded herself to and then refused to move. A cadre of female security officers began the removal process as the video begins. She's chanting something about U.S. Marshals, then dragged down the aisle, David Dow style, screaming that Korean Air has stolen her passport. It ends with the woman restrained in a wheelchair at the door of the plane for removal, saying, "Meanwhile, at SpaceX," in polite go ahead.
Takes all sorts.
In polite Korean fashion, the team that removed the woman from the plane offered her a blanket as she rolled away. Korean Air confirms that the incident occurred at on its 8 p.m. departure from Seoul to San Francisco on July 27th, resulting in a delay of about an hour and 40 minutes. The passenger is a female U.S. citizen. Yay, United States.
Woohoo.
And was assigned to seat 40D in economy class. She moved to seat 14B in business. I can understand them.
Yeah, there's a 4 in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't see very well, if you're a little bit older, you need reading glasses, and you forgot them, that D could look like a B.
She didn't
easily.
fight like an old lady.
True.
Well, and I didn't see the video myself. Was she fighting a lot?
I think she was just screaming.
Oh,
Absolutely, cat fight.
so
Lovely.
she's walking back, and she sees this seat. Nobody's sitting in there. So what would be the harm of that,
Exactly.
right? Anyway,
Yeah,
so,
unless you're upgraded, I think that's called theft of some sort, right?
you think?
Yeah.
There's a reason that we have like different classes and different prices for tickets and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
That's what I should have done to Jeff's seat. I should just gone there and sat in it.
Just grab it.
Go take the one in the back, Jeff. You'll fit better.
Well, I'm glad you didn't think it through.
No, good thing.
Anyway, so we'll put this in the show notes. You can watch the original video there by clicking on that link. Continuing on, several dead after a small plane crashes in the Swiss forest. This is an interesting one. We have several sources, I guess, articles on the incident below. This first one, though, we'll start reading from, I'm not sure which one it's from, what source, but the plane crashed in a forest near the Swiss Alps, I think.
Oh, yes.
Police say the aircraft burned out, and officials have not been able to confirm the exact number and identity of those who died. The aircraft went down near the town of Hergesville, with police alerted to the crash just before 10 a.m. local time. Authorities sent a helicopter to extinguish the burning wreckage of the aircraft before rescue workers could get to the scene. Apparently, the airplane was now, I'm not sure if this is the way you pronounce the name of this airline, Jew Air or Jew Air.
Well, it's Yonkers, so I guess that
U Air, maybe.
Well, when you use JU on its own, I don't quite know, but
Yeah.
I guess it refers to the fact that it's a JU 52.
Okay.
So Jew, I don't know.
Okay, that makes sense.
You,
Apparently,
I'm
an
right
airline
here.
operates these vintage airplanes.
Talk
Sorry,
about me.
Dana.
I'm right here.
What do you say?
Someone said Jew.
Oh,
You're talking
sorry.
about me. I'm
We're
sitting
not being
right here.
culturally sensitive. Sorry. I wasn't even thinking that. That's pretty funny. Sorry.
J used to answer Junker 52.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Or a Junker, right?
A Junker.
A Junker. So, according to the Aviation Herald, this flight was operating from Locarno to Dubendorf, Switzerland, with 17 passengers and 3 crew. It impacted terrain, blah, blah, blah. I think I was reading somewhere that there was some report, a pilot had reported that about 10 miles from from where this thing crashed, he saw the airplane fly overhead, and I'm scrolling frantically now to see that. Do you know what I'm talking about? There was some kind of a tweet or some kind of report from somebody that said,
I saw there was an eyewitness report saying that it plunged. It was in a turn, and then it
kind of dropped vertically.
Dropped vertically down. So, you have to instantly think stalling in the turn, but I don't know exactly what was going on there.
But there was a guy that was reportedly a pilot that before this happened, the same airplane, the same flight, closer to where this person lived, saw the same kind of thing. The airplane was in a left bank, and then it banked really rapidly at some point, and then started falling from the sky, and then reportedly whatever the pilot did to recover it recovered, and then they continued on with their flight. And then apparently it happened again, and then this time the pilot was not able to recover the airplane. And I don't know where I read that because I can't seem to find it now. Looking at the articles that we have here on the Evernote site. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting piece of information that might help with the investigation of what happened here. And I'm not sure, did these things even require flight data recorders or voice recorders?
No, they're World War II vintage, so no.
Okay. Wow. Well, hopefully
it's tragic. I mean, there was an awful lot of families and elderly people, holiday makers on board. It was, they all died, so just dreadful, really.
Sounds like it could be some kind of a control problem that caused this crash. Hopefully they'll be able to figure it out by, seeing what's left of the wreckage.
Yep.
Okay.
So it was high temperature. It was a bit gusty. It can't be easy flying an aircraft of that vintage around the mountains. You'd have to be very careful, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Not easy.
That would be a challenging flight regime to operate in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's sad. Oh, well. Hopefully we'll find out something here in the future about what happened there. And then finally, another incident in Santa Ana, California at the John Wayne Airport, Orange County. Apparently 5 people on board a small airplane were killed, but nobody on the ground was hurt when the twin-engine Cessna crashed Sunday in a Southern California parking lot. The pilot of the Cessna 414 declared an emergency before crashing about a mile from John Wayne Airport, according to the plane was heading to the airport southeast of Los Angeles when it came down and struck an unoccupied parked car in the lot of a Staples store and a CVS pharmacy, said Orange County Fire Authority Captain Steve Concialdi. There was no fire and nobody on the ground was hurt. And looking at the photos, I was kind of astonished that this airplane ended up where it was, and it doesn't appear that it hit a darn thing. It must have been coming down almost vertically. And
I mean, because it's where it is, there's trees surrounding it. It doesn't look like it went through any of the trees as far as you can tell. It's in a parking lot. It hit one car, I guess, that was unoccupied. But looks like there's a gas station there too and other stuff in that parking lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like a gas station right behind it. Well, that would have been awful if
that would have been really bad. Station. I mean, terrible enough as it is with 5 people on board. But yeah, I mean, pretty amazing that there were no additional casualties.
Plane is registered to the San Francisco-based real estate company Category 3. And apparently there was a young lady among the fatalities that was a real estate agent, and I don't know what they were doing, perhaps going around and looking at some of the real estate there in the Santa Ana, Newport Beach area, perhaps. I don't know. But that's a sad story. So anything else to say about that other than, wow, I can't believe that nobody was hurt on the ground, and thank goodness?
No, other than that, I continually read from the FAA safety initiatives that they're really working hard on trying to reduce the incident rate in GA aircraft and encourage people to maintain their skills. And this, would appear at first glance to be just one of those cases.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it is we seem to hear a lot of these fuel starvation stories. I wonder if they just plain.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I mean, we don't know what the issue was, but he did have time to report that he had an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody listening out there, especially if you live in the Santa Ana area or Southern California, if you know something about this story, send us some feedback about it and see if we can figure out what happened here. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to continue on with the best part of the show, which of course is your great feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Okie doke. Let's see. The first item that I see in our feedback folder, I'm clicking on it and it's not coming up. Oh, here it is. This is from John. And this, he says, he starts right off. This is for Captain Nick. It is especially fitting and proper that you be in England and at Farnborough, but tonight, wait a minute, I didn't read that correctly. It is especially fitting and proper that you be in, no, I did, in England at Farnborough, but tonight at the EAA's Air Venture in Oshkosh, they are having a program in the Theater in the Woods to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the RAF's establishment. I could not help but think what a contribution your experiences and your style would have brought to the stage. May you and your colleagues enjoy a very happy 100th anniversary. And to you, Dr. Steph, Captain Jeff, and to the still relatively newly minted Captain Dana, fair skies, better than forecast tailwinds, and God bless and speed you. Thank you, John. Very nice.
What a very nice thing to say. And I think Dana is not newly minted, newly engraved, I think is the appropriate phrase.
Yeah, now I am.
Yeah. So
but thank you, John. Yeah, I was ashamed it wasn't there. I would like to have seen what the folks at Oshkosh thought of the 100th anniversary of the RAF. So shame I missed it.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that they took the time to do that all
Very
way
cool.
over in the colonies.
Absolutely, yes.
Colonies.
Well, I guess they weren't really.
Wisconsin was a
colony.
No.
Was that the 14th?
No.
Probably.
Not going there.
Not even close.
All right, next one. This is from Triad Andrew. Yeah, he says, a friend of mine posted this on Instagram, and given Captain Jeff's history with the TriStar, I thought it would be of interest to the APG crew and community. Perhaps one of these sprawling estates we keep hearing about would make a proper home for this priceless piece of aviation history. And included in his article was a link to this Instagram posting. The TriStar to which he's referring is only a piece of the TriStar. And kind of the top half of the fuselage and the cockpit area minus the nose cone, and back through, I think, the first class section of the jet. There's some interior pictures as well, and it looks like everything is pretty well intact for the most part, the first class seating. And
look at the size of those seats.
Yeah, nice big comfy seats, huh?
Yeah, don't see that anymore, that's for sure.
No, not even first class, right?
Nope.
No.
I'm the first
Dan,
one.
you'd be very comfortable in that airplane.
I think I would be.
You would have really enjoyed flying it. I mean, those seats were just awesome in the front. Picture of the cockpit, interior of the cockpit. And it's the focus, of course, is the most important seat in that cockpit, which is the first officer seat. That's where I was sitting. I actually probably did sit in that actual seat on that particular ship number.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's November 786 DL.
Was it you that left that stain?
It might be, actually.
Okay.
Anyway, let's see. I was reading through some of the conversation on Instagram regarding this, and somebody was saying, how much do they want for it? And several people say they think around $50,000.
That's all.
Wow. Captain Jeff would pay that just to get that control column so he could stick it in his den.
Right. No. And unfortunately, the coffee fund coffers are not that full.
I thought about it if it wasn't 50, because I've spent a lot of time in that first class cabin.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot more time in the cockpit, but it's what a wonderful piece of history right there.
Yeah, it is.
I wish I could afford to buy it.
Yeah. Well, somebody will, hopefully, and they'll do something right with it.
Put it in Carlos's garden. No.
Yeah, Carlos would really love that thing. All right. So a couple of Nicks, Nick Hewitt and Wilson, Paul, Texas Charlie, George, Steve, and Jake, amongst others, sent in this. So it had a lot of interest from our community, this particular incident that is captured on a YouTube video. And let's see, maybe I should play the video. What do you think?
Yeah.
The beginning and the end are the best bits.
Okay.
New York Delta 212, come a little bit right of course for weather.
Delta 212, okay, yeah, just for a moment, 070.
070 for now, Delta 212. Shamrock 104 Heavy, 2005, tower 1, we're heading 22 right.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, near departure area, contact line, maintain 7,000.
7,000, 104 Heavy.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, turn left in 100.
Okay, sir, we got a fail, we can't take that heading.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, why not, sir? How far do you think you're going to go runway heading?
We need the runway heading for 15 miles, Shamrock 104 Heavy.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, it's light. I have 6 categories of weather here. That is the lightest category. I've had no adverse ride report south of the airport by 10 miles.
Okay, so I can just go by the equipment I'm looking at, and we're saying as well, I can take a left turn heading 200, 210.
Shamrock 104 Heavy. All right. Tell me when you can turn to the left.
Okay, sir.
Expect to hold west of Kenny so I can get a route for you now.
Wonderful.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, turn right heading 360.
Okay, turn right heading 360, 120.
212, turn left heading 020.
Left 020, 212.
Okay. We're going to, as Nick mentioned, that was the first part, which is the setup, the event. And then toward the end, why don't I go ahead and just scroll forward here and see if we can catch some of the last conversation between Shamrock 104 Heavy and the JFK controller. Not sure at what point in this we're going to get it, so I'm just going to guess here. So let me click right here and hit the play button.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, contact your departure 126.8. We'll see you.
260, 104 Heavy. And before I go, we can create any situation where you flew the aircraft in a safe manner, and my boss will be in contact with your boss. Good day.
Shamrock 104 Heavy, and understood. And I do understand and appreciate that. But again, you know, there's not you're the runway, and you've taken a clearance and accepted departure clearance. And you're seeing that weather straight ahead on a runway, and everybody off that airport is turning left. And there's the message here.
It's not my first day in New York. It's not my first day in an aircraft. I did what I had to do. Good day. 126.
I just wish that the Shamrock guy wasn't wearing his oxygen mask or whatever. It's very hard to understand.
Shamrock 104 Heavy.
And I think that's probably because he was biting his tongue at the same time. Because I expect I know what he'd like to have said.
So obviously everybody thought that we could have a good conversation about, you know, what a pilot is cleared to do, what happens when we're presented with a situation, a dynamic situation involving weather. And of course, we're concerned about the safety of our airplane, the safety of our passengers, and the fact that air traffic control has perhaps different priorities. And, you know, when they get boxed into a situation, how they react and more. So who wants to start with this one?
I would say Nick, right?
Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
No, I was going to say Nick, because you probably fly in and out of JFK the most out of all of us.
Well, I certainly have done. And I wouldn't say that this particular reaction is unusual, because the New York controllers can be very brusque at times. And they obviously, when they're under pressure, and I know how incredibly constrained their airspace is, but if you need to go into lengthy explanations as to why you don't want a pilot to do something, that just to me smacks of the fact that you're losing the thread a little bit. Just try and adhere to what the guy wants, give him the best you can, and if you can't do it, then give him something else. But berating the bloke as he did and making him just basically fly orbits, about 3 orbits he made him fly, until it was like putting him in the naughty corner.
Timeout.
Until he found a heading that he would accept. I thought that was offside. So on the other hand, I thought that the Aer Lingus bloke might have been a bit more flexible. He might have offered a few alternatives rather than just refusing the heading. So I think there's a little bit on both sides, but certainly the Aer Lingus captain came out for me on top because he kept his cool throughout and just did what he was told to do. And I thought the controller really should have had a bit of a chat with his supervisor on how better to conduct that next time. Having been into Heathrow many times in similar conditions, I hate to go on about it, and I know Adam's one of our friends and who works there. In fact, I've got several friends who work there, but I'm not being biased. They handle these kind of situations completely differently. In other words, they do their absolute utmost to help everybody out. And they do it in a really calm and efficient manner. And that's kind of what I like. And in New York, they take almost the opposite attitude. We're here to push tin, don't get in our way. Let us do our thing and just go along with it, because otherwise you're going to upset my day and I'm going to make you suffer a little bit by making you just fly around in circles until I can work out what to do with you. Really, it's not appropriate. And I looked at a little bit of video, and the heading initially that you wanted to go onto did have a bit of weather there. There's no doubt about it. And weather moves. It's a movable feast. The fact that previous aircraft had gone under that heading without problems, there's no reason why some weather couldn't have drifted in onto that heading and made it very hard for the Aer Lingus aircraft to take it up. But between them, there was an almost immediate breakdown of cooperation. Whereas it should be the opposite between the pilot and the controller. They should be working together to solve problems, not butting heads.
Well said. Well said. Perhaps there was a little right and a little wrong on both sides of the thing, but the way that the controller reacted was probably where it went out of bounds. And, he could have, as you said, Nick, just given him what he was requesting and, keeping it calm and not, kind of berating him for not doing what everybody else was doing and going into the levels of weather and all that kind of thing. I think I'll go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, it's like a lot of jobs out there where 99% of the time everything goes as expected and nothing's real exciting. But then that, small percentage of the time where something comes up that doesn't go quite as planned, you have to be able to, when you're working in those kind of high stress environments, keep your cool with it, identify the problem, solve the problem, and remain professional at the same time. Because at the end of the day, everyone on both sides of that scenario, they're all professionals, and you have to conduct yourself in a professional manner in order to, keep everyone safe.
Yes.
I just have one thing to say. He's a New Yorker.
How did I know that was coming? I almost said those 9 comments about New Yorkers.
Yeah, they.
Is there a lot of love lost between Boston and New York?
There is none whatsoever.
Well, I must admit, when I leave track on and head up, and the next controller is Boston, I kind of relax a bit. Admittedly, I'm moving into higher airspace and the traffic's less dense, but I always get a great service out of Boston. And I always have to gird my loins and sort of mentally prepare myself for facing New York.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason why I wanted you to, kind of, I thought it would be very good that you start off, because you fly in and out of that airspace all the time, especially now. I mean, it's been years since I've been actually, well, no, I've been up to New York recently, but it's just, they're very rough around the edges. I think that would be the best way to say it. The way this guy handled it was very typical of New York, and just they think they control everything, which is what their job is. However, the way that they handle themselves is they don't really take any abnormal situation very well, and that's why there tends to be a lot of delays up there, because they're just dealing with such a high stress environment. And I'm not making excuses for the guy, but it's a very high stress, high density environment that's very difficult. I mean, if he had taken that right hand turn, I mean, more or less he'd be heading towards Newark. I mean, and that's there's a very tight space, and we've talked about it before. I think Jeff mentioned going into Newark one time, took the entire northern New Jersey tour, because you have to keep you low. I think it's 5,000 or 7,000 feet all the way around, the Horn, keeping you below all the Teterboro traffic and below all the LaGuardia and JFK. I mean, it's just if you take a really good look at that airspace up there, it's so confined. So I think he was probably taken back a little bit by Aer Lingus's request, but we can't question what he saw on his radar, because, well, what he saw is what he saw, and he didn't want to go into it. So the air traffic controller should have tried to work with him instead of giving him flack, in my opinion. So
I guess in the very first time I listened to that, my initial thought when he wanted that different heading was, well, if there's other traffic there, of course he's not going to be able to approve that for you. But I think the controller should have said what the specific reason was, and like everyone else has suggested, maybe offered an alternative, or at least remain calm about it.
And that's the exact reason why I don't want to go to Chicago. I don't want to end up in the penalty box like that, because I have no idea where I'm going in Chicago. That place is just a nut house. Very much like New York, but
once you're on the ground, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yes. On the ground, that place is just crazy. But anyway,
it's a little intimidating.
I think I agree with Nick on the assessment. I mean, he was very professional, the Aer Lingus guy, and that controller maybe should have given some other options, or instead of just putting the guy in hold on the departure, because what he did was probably delayed further departures off the ground in JFK by holding him right over the departure corridor right there. So I don't know, crazy.
So Nick, apparently he was the first one to send in the feedback regarding this. He wanted to ask us a few questions, and I think we kind of already answered this or these, but were the Aer Lingus crew right to decline the heading based on their weather radar? And I think we all agree yes, because when you're the pilot in command, you are the one that makes the decisions. What would the APG crew have done in this instance? And again, we would have expressed our concern and said we cannot accept that heading, and give us something else. I guess would be the.
I think what I usually try and do is, if the guy gives me
traffic controller.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Go ahead.
A bit of lag there on the internet. I say, if the guy gives me a heading and I can't go exactly on that heading, I try and usually offer him an alternative. Can I just go 10 degrees right of that, or 20 degrees right, just to avoid the weather, or can you bring me a bit further through, rather than just saying no, I can't do that heading, because that kind of leaves the controller going, well, what the hell do you want me to do with you then?
Right. Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah, give an option, what you're thinking, what your plan is for this. The ATC controller sure comes across as somewhat aggressive, or is that usual for JFK? And I think we've answered that. That's kind of normal. And he says, oh, and by the way, I visited the Airbus factory in Hamburg today, and the good news is, or is it Hamburg? Did we ever decide what the proper pronunciation was?
Yeah, and I think it's neither.
Okay, Hamburg. And the good news is there are dozens of A320 and A350 family aircraft on the production line, plus several A380 on their way. We'll keep Captain Nick happy. Saw quite a few bin liners parked up at Heathrow awaiting new engines. And let's face it, Terminal 5 is the home of the 747 dinosaur. I'll have the chance to sample its prehistoric features when I fly Heathrow to JFK with British Airways in a few weeks. And he gave us a link to a YouTube video regarding that. And he says, cheers, Nick.
It's a nice chance to get to fly it before they all retire.
Yes. Or at least all the passenger service ones. I think the freighters will probably be around for quite a bit longer.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, flying trash around the world.
Yeah, none of those goods or products you consume or use, I'm sure.
You always have the right thing to say there, Nick.
And the bin liners are on the ground because of what engine?
Yeah.
An English-made engine?
I think you'll find it's British. And I think you'll find there's an awful lot of American components in it as well.
Hey, Dana, I noticed there was some sound. At first, I thought it was your garage door, but I'm thinking, looking at the map, I'm getting alerts from my phone because it thinks I'm in Atlanta, I guess, that there are some severe thunderstorms. Is that thunder that I heard in the background?
Yeah, actually, the entire house shook. So it must have been it was really close. I mean, I'm not looking out the window to see what the flash, how long the flash was between the boom and the flash to tell me how far it was, but it wasn't very far at all. So it just passed over the house. I've been sitting here looking at the radar. Actually, it's quite nasty outside.
Well, if it's being picked up by that microphone, it has to be pretty significant because a lot of the times, like Steph has said, it's thunder and lightning where she is, and we don't hear it at all through her mic. So it must be.
Oh yeah, no, it looks pretty bad. I'm looking at your radar right now.
Yeah, there is a significant straight line.
Yes.
I mean, north-south straight line right over where I live. So it's
nice, pretty red colors on the
how
radar
pretty.
there.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah,
Well, hunker down if you need to. If you need to head to the basement.
Oh
just
no,
take
I
your
will.
phone and
I
go to
will. No. There's no way in this world I will be going to my basement.
Okay.
But yeah,
You'll just get carried away with the tornado, then off to the land of Oz.
If you zoom out this straight, I mean, it's quite literally almost a straight line. Goes just from the west of Knoxville. I'm probably about 50 miles north of Knoxville, straight on down to Peachtree City, just before Peachtree City. Straight line. So that's what's passing over the house now. And
I'm sure that's not going to impact the Atlanta International Airport.
No, it will be in Atlanta at the airport here in about 10 to 15 minutes is my guess, because it's just a straight line. And I'm on vacation, so I don't care.
All right.
Good for you.
Relax.
They can't call me.
Okay.
Good. I'm just not going to answer the phone.
Yeah, and they can't use you anyway because you're on vacation. That's our contract. Okay. Let's move on. Number 4, Dan. He says, hello, I am aspiring to be a military pilot with the hopes of eventually flying for FedEx. I was wondering if you knew anything about the transition from military to civilian piloting. With 8+ years of flying experience, do ex-military pilots still have to pay their dues as a first officer, or can they be employed as an aircraft captain at higher salary? Thanks, Dan. Well, Dan, it's good to be an aspiring military pilot. It's going to be more than 8 years. It's going to be, probably 10 plus 11 years, something like that. And you're still going to have to pay your dues unless FedEx changes their contract or any of the other majors here in the U.S. change their contracts. You're going to have to start from that entry level position and work your way up. And they don't give you any credit or merit at all based on your previous experience. Now, I know that's different in other parts of the world and different airlines around the world and perhaps some other non-legacy major kind of carriers here in the U.S., but that would be my understanding of it. And but hopefully you can work your way up through the ranks and you'll get some seniority eventually.
Yeah, and use you as an example, Jeff. If Captain Jeff were to no longer be with the Acme outfit for whatever reason, if we were not, God forbid, obviously went out of business or whatever, but Jeff would apply at another American carrier, and you have how many years flying experience now at Acme?
At Acme, almost 30.
Almost 30 years. So if he got, let's say he went to FedEx right now with 30 years worth of flying, include plus his military career, he would be the most junior first officer at FedEx. So all that experience counts for nothing. It's just you're basically married to one company within the United States.
Yes. And I just looked at my logbook, electronic logbook, the other day, and I have 19,500 civilian flying hours and a little over 2,000 military. So I'm up around 21,500 total time right now, and I would be starting in that entry level position. Now, Nick,
they'd like to hire you, I'm sure, though.
Pardon me? Oh, yeah.
They'd be happy to hire you.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'd love the experience, of course. Yeah. Nick, I know that's a little bit different over where you operate.
Well, not in our airline. In our airline, we do exactly the same. We have a strict seniority system. Regardless of your past experience, you will come in at the bottom and have to work your way up to a command. Your command might be hastened slightly because we have an hours requirement. So there may be junior first officers who don't have enough hours, and you may rise through them to get a faster command, but you'll still have the same seniority number. So that is always centered on your date of joining. Most of the major airlines in Europe run the same system, but there are some airlines you can go to in the world that will allow direct entry commands, but you're very unlikely to get that straight out of the military anyway, because you don't have any previous captaincy experience in a civil airline. So you'd probably need to get a few hours under your belt as a captain to start with, and then you could perhaps move to a bigger airline, better pay on a direct entry. But some of those airlines are perhaps, I'm trying to think of a polite way of putting it, are not the sort of airlines that the majority of us would want to necessarily go and work with. They may be new starts, which means they may not have a lot of financial stability, or they may be in countries which you may not want to go to work. So that's the problem.
Yes. And as far as the transition from military to civilian piloting, I think that Nick would agree that it really depends on what kind of military flying experience you have. If you're flying the type of military airplanes that I flew, very much the equivalent of airliners in the military world. When I flew the C-141 Starlifter cargo aircraft, it was a crew, and our operating procedures, checklist, discipline, and all of that is very much almost a mirror image of what you experience in the airline piloting world. However, if you're a fighter pilot or some of the other mission aircraft that they have, you might find the transition a little bit more difficult. At least it'll be different from what you have been used to in your military career. What would you say, Nick?
Yeah, I'd say there's quite a steep learning curve, just getting used to the style of flying and, the different ways that you have to operate in a civil airliner. But good Lord, if you've managed to master the average fighter, you can certainly fly an airliner. They're I was going to say a piece of piss. They are extremely simple to fly in comparison with some airplanes. Your flying skills won't be lacking. You just need to learn the methodology, learn the discipline on the flight deck. You need to learn the route systems and how to get yourself through all the various problems you do when you fly through multiple countries. And basically learn to be a civil pilot, because the state of mind and the skills required are very different.
And even if you end up doing, say, helicopter flying in the military, there are rotor transition programs as well. So there's plenty of helicopter pilots coming out of the military, having previously only done rotorcraft flying and going into fixed wing airliner flying.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a bunch on our airline. Yeah.
And please understand that the airlines, at least most of them that I know of, really do appreciate the military background and experience and training that we get. And so that's, not going to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's not going to hold you back.
It's not going to
Hindrance.
hold you back. Yeah, a hindrance or an obstacle or whatever to
Detrimental.
getting employed. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I just thought I'd mention that this here behind me is a picture of Captain Jeff in a Mad Dog cockpit. So, that's the kind of job you're going to end up.
The engine room.
Engine room.
Exactly right.
I recognize that.
Hey now.
That's where the coal goes in, right? You have
That's
to
it. That's
double.
exactly. Yeah.
You see
Similar
those
to the
big
one on
wheels?
Titanic.
See those big wheels on above him, and coming out of the wall. That's where we have the big
For the
old
steam.
rats that run and drive those wheels. They run.
Absolutely.
Like large, like rodents of unusual sizes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very big.
That's only during ground operations, though, Dan. Come on.
That's true. That's
Right,
true.
taxi.
Well, but see, we have to put the oxygen mask on them so they continue to produce the same amount of power once we've got them up at cruise altitude.
Good point.
Clever.
Things I did not know. Learn something new every day.
Is the signal coming from my end kind of getting flaky?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Got a yes.
You've Skyped a few times.
Okay, because I just noticed that in the midst of Nick's explanation or conversation, that it was it kind of hiccuped a few times. So I'm sure it's my hotel bandwidth. So I do apologize for that. We're going to cross our fingers though and do Plain Tales next. I think that would be a good time to do that. What do you all think?
Yeah.
Are you flipping the coin, Dana, to see whether or not that's a good idea? Or not?
I think it's a great idea. No, I just dropped the coin.
Okay, it just sounded like,
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
That special coin that was given to me, I actually have it in my hand.
Oh, the challenge coin.
Yes.
From Armando.
Armando.
So, all right.
I was playing with it.
Oh, by the way, if you happen to be out and about, let's say Farnborough, and you see a man named Armando, and you somehow mention to him that you do not have your challenge coin on your person, you should probably not tell them that, because that means, of course, that you have to buy the round of drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right, Dana?
Woohoo.
Yeah.
And then,
Good thing I had my challenge coin with me.
Well, guess what? I had to fess up, and I didn't need to, but I felt obligated to tell Armando.
It was the honorable thing to do.
That I didn't have mine either, and that the next one was on me. Anyway,
nice.
It was great seeing him, and worth spending the money on his beer for sure. All right, so I think now might be a good time for us to hear this week's installment of Plain Tales, Handling the Big Jets.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, Handling the Big Jets. As a child, I remember leafing through the books in my father's study, and there were a few there that always caught my eye. But the one I looked at the most, but understood the least, was Handling the Big Jets by D.P. Davies. For my father's generation, Handling the Big Jets was on many an airline pilot's bookshelves. Indeed, it used to be required reading for all BA trainee pilots. The technical exam posed by Cathay Pacific Airways was based almost entirely on the content of the book. The U.S. Flight Safety Foundation said of it, "Informative and yet entertaining. It's a textbook on flying jet aircraft that offers an abundance of hows and whys that can only head to greater aviation safety." The RAF magazine said, "Recommended to all who would extend or confirm their professional knowledge of the subject, and could well be included in the libraries of all establishments concerned with teaching flying." If ALPA praised it thus, "The best of its kind in the world, there is no book which bears so directly on the pilot's problems." David Davies was born in 1920 in South Wales, and joined the Royal Navy in the war. He trained as a pilot and served an 818 Swordfish Squadron aboard HMS Unicorn. At the end of the war, he attended the Empire Test Pilot School and joined the Air Registration Board in 1949 as their chief test pilot. Up until his retirement, he carried out the British certification testing of most civil prototypes, including the world's first jet transport, the Comet. The types he flew ranged from ultralight aircraft to Concorde, as well as gliders and helicopters. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, received the OBE, the R.P. Allison Memorial Prize from the Royal Aeronautical Society, the Cumberbatch Trophy from the Guild of Air Pilots, the Dorothy Spicer Memorial Award, the Douglas Waitman Safety Award, the Founders Medal of the Air League, and the Britannia Trophy, to name just a few. He became a Master Air Pilot of the Guild and a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. At the time, he had flown flight trials on more individual types than anyone else in the world. Di Davies recalled some of his more notable certification adventures, and a great deal of what follows is taken directly from his own words, often pithy and direct to the point of rudeness. I would have loved to have met him in person. He had a lot to say about the 747, an aircraft that he truly admired. Having spent so many years arguing with Boeing over their aircraft, particularly the 707, and most particularly the 727, it was an enormous relief to me to be able to fly the 74 and conclude at the end that apart from one small point, it was the best aeroplane I had ever flown. I actually did an engine-out takeoff at 825,000 pounds, which is the best part of 400 short tons. Once in the air, it flies like a bird. I talked about the 707, where in the worst cases, the rudder footloads could be up to 200, even 220 pounds. In the 747, the maximum possible force would be 70 pounds, which is a piece of cake. Anyone can push 70 pounds. The aileron loads are light. You can work them comfortably with one hand, and the centering over small angles is immaculate. So the fact that you've got 400 tons strapped to you is of no consequence whatsoever. You simply fly the airplane, and you can fly it with enormous precision and with very gentle control forces. It is a joy to fly, and if you took a schoolboy of 16 who could ride a motorcycle, and if you had enough courage, you could put him in the left seat, and he would do a circuit and landing for you without any trouble at all. It's that easy. When I came back from the States and went about saying this, of course the airline pilots hated it, because they liked the world to believe that flying is a great art, and it's hard work, and people should value and trust the skill they put into flying. In the case of the 74, that simply isn't true. In the old days, when you went to a high Mach number in an old-fashioned airplane, you pitched down, which meant if you didn't look after the airplane, the more it pitches, the faster it goes. The higher is the Mach number, and the deeper into trouble you go. The 74 has an enormously high maximum demonstrated Mach number. It's actually 0.98, and yet it's no problem. You got to 45,000 feet, stuff it down the hill, and take it all the way up to 0.98, and not much more, because if you did, you wouldn't do any damage, but you'd make the biggest bang over Seattle you ever heard in your life. It had masses of roll rate. It's still stable. You can pull G. You can do anything. Supersonic. In the 707, you could demonstrate 0.95 Mach number in it, but you couldn't do much when you got there. There was hardly any roll rate. It was buffeting itself to death. The elevator effectiveness had virtually gone to zero. It was a heap. One of the most controversial periods in Di Davis's career was when he tackled the certification of the Boeing 727. This is his story about the problems that aircraft and other T-tailed aircraft faced. The first of those was the Trident, and halfway through the development, they had trouble because the airplane wanted to pitch up at the stall, whereas the requirement was for it to pitch down. They eventually spent 12 months looking at the stall fixes, and there weren't any aerodynamic fixes. In the end, they came to me and asked if they could use a stick pusher. They fitted a pusher, and I went up to Hatfield to do some development flying. It worked perfectly well. Whenever we did it, it worked. And we ended up at the end of that program with a really violent stall. It was so violent that one wouldn't have dreamt of doing it with a conventional aeroplane. There was a wish to prove the device to its ultimate point. The most demanding stall is an accelerated stall where you go into a steep turn and pull the stick hard back. That's all you do. And in a big aeroplane, it's a bit hairy, but the Trident behaved perfectly. As it came up to 1.8 G, which is a hell of a load factor, the pusher pushed. And it was a super pusher. It just went smack. The stick went hard forwards. The airplane pitched hard down, and we recovered. Of the same test on the VC-10, he remarked, they put a horn in with it so that when the stick pushed, this horn blew. It was a very loud horn. The other thing about the VC-10 was the buffet. The buffet at the stall is astronomical. Gear down, full flaps, power on, steep turn to the left, pulling hard, and coincidentally, it also came out at 1.8 G, and the pandemonium on the flight deck you couldn't believe. The stick shakers were going, the stick knockers were going, the horn went, and then the stick went bang. It was a tremendous stall, and when we recovered from it, I said, well, that's enough of that. And Trubbs, the test pilot Brian Trupshaw, said, I should bloody well think so. I've never seen a stall like that in my life before. The 111 was also suspected of having pitch up so bad, BAC went into it quite slowly. On one of the prototypes, which had a servo-tabbed elevator, they got into a super stall, and of course, it wouldn't recover. What's more, they had 17 or 18 people on board, which they shouldn't have had. The guys down the back did fire the escape hatch, but it came straight back on again, because by that time they were coming straight down, and of course they were all lost. On a military airplane, you can pull the plug and eject. You can't on a civil airplane. You're supposed to get out of your seat, walk aft, open the escape hatch, and jump out of the bottom of the airplane. Of course, that takes bloody ages to do. Of course, George Edwards was very good. He actually talked to Douglas, who were doing the DC-9, and told them all about it. The 727 was the first Boeing airplane with full-powered controls and 3 engines at the back. It had a pitch up at the stall with aft C of G, which would have been fatal. It was later proved to be fatal because one aircraft in service was lost in a super stall. Somehow or other, the FAA and Boeing certified that aircraft between them. Some years later, I was talking to a very old and senior Boeing fellow, Dick Rousey. He said, it was a pity that you wouldn't accept the 727. I said, what do you mean? You've never offered it to us. He said, we know you would never accept it. It's got a pitch up at the stall. I said, what the hell are you lot doing operating it, flying it, and certificating it? He said, look now, don't go into that, but I'd like you to have a go at it one day. Dan Air wanted a 727-100, so we went over and we flew it. Test pilot Lou Wyke, hell of a good guy. He said, there's not a hope in hell of you accepting this airplane. We've had 2 of the most hairy-ass stalls you've ever seen in your life, but we got to go through the motions. When we get to the aft CG stall, we go up to the incidence limit and then push and recover. By that time, you tell us if you've seen any quality, which will warn you that you are coming up to a stall. We set the airplane up, trimmed it, and I started coming back to the stall, watching the incidence go up. And the airplane did nothing. Most airplanes will buffet, but with the flaps out, it did nothing. It was smooth. There was no flow breakaway on the wing at all, but the incidence went up, and the pull force disappeared, and the stick went back to the middle. Then it started to pitch up, and I had to push gently. It wasn't a violent pitch up, but it started to rise, and I had to push and push and push until the stick was halfway forward. And as I got to that point, we came to the incidence limit. I looked at Lou, and he looked at me, and he was deadpan. He didn't say or do anything, and we recovered. We climbed back up, and he said, "What do you think?" Well, I said, "There's nothing there, Lou. I mean, nothing. The machine is quite desperately unstable." "I know," he said. "I know all this." We finished the program, and we simply couldn't go beyond the magic limit. We told Boeing, who said, "Okay, we'll fit a pusher." It took them about 8 months, and, it was the best stick pusher I've ever flown. Much simpler than our systems, fully duplicated. It did everything it should have and recovered the aeroplane. The rest was a gift. It was one of the nicest airplanes I've ever flown. You see, when Boeing finally took a deep breath and decided to do something, they did it well, although it stuck in their craw a bit, because they were only doing it for the UK and they weren't doing it for the States. The twist in the story is this little bit. There was a 200 series that Dan Air also wanted to operate. It had a pusher on it, the development aircraft, that is, and it was perfect. The addendum to this story was that despite having lost a 727 to a superstall at 13 million total 727 hours, which came well below the 100 million hours requirement for an accident due to a single cause, the CAA Airworthiness Board did not agree with Davis's recommendation for a stick pusher for British registration. The aircraft went into service without a pusher, and in addition, it was subsequently removed from the 100 series aircraft. In Davis's own words, "I wrote to London and said that our council are going to certify this airplane without the pusher, and I'm telling you it shouldn't be done because it doesn't meet the requirements. It doesn't meet the American requirements. It's got a fatal stall characteristic at RC of G." But they put it all aside. Since then, these people must have been walking around with their fingers crossed, hoping that no British registered 72 would ever go in due to a stall. Now, if a 72 does ever go in with an RC Aegean with a boatload of passengers, there will be the biggest bloody row you've ever heard of. Concorde was an aircraft that Di Davies had a lot of time for. "When I come to Concorde," he said, "I would like to talk for several hours, but it was so good, was so easy, and had so few snags that there's hardly anything for a certification pilot to say about it. The prototype had a metal visor, so after you took off and pulled up the nose and then pulled the visor up, it was all steel and blocked the forward view. That wasn't a problem for the pilot, as you can operate an aircraft at night in cloud for the whole flight, just being able to see for takeoff and landing. We were prepared to certificate it like that. But the Americans said no fear. We're not having an airplane without forward vision, and they won the day. So the glass manufacturers had to go back to the drawing board and make glass that could sustain Mach 2, and they did it. The engine-out failures were a gift. The 2 engine-out landings were a gift. There's bags of thrust left to make a proper landing. The engine failure at Mach 2 was a non-event, but better than that, the double engine failure on one side the machine would tolerate without any problem. Now, the supersonic bomber, the Hustler, with a base, if you end up Mach 2, that airplane dissolved into a cloud of dust. It couldn't handle the yaw. The funny thing about Concorde was the visual picture on the landing. You can get very low on the approach. I did with Trubbs. He sat there and let it happen at Fairford, laughing his head off. Because of the way you sit up, you think, hell's teeth, I'm miles too high. What you had to do was have the courage to keep it up, and then it would come down like a lift. Once you've been shown it, it was okay. They had a problem making hard landings. A guy called Frankie, who made a landing in the Azores at 10 feet per second. At 11 feet per second, the gear would have broken. My view was that he was a bit split-arsed, old Frankie. He did awful things, making very show-off approaches, which he shouldn't have done, and of course he nearly cocked it up. It was the British test pilot John Cochrane who discovered how to do it. At 50 feet, you just leave the stick alone and you get hold of the throttles and just shuffle them shut. Takes about 2 or 3 seconds. The next thing you know, rumble, rumble, rumble. One of his assistant test pilots remembers Davis's wonderful command of English, which made it a pleasure to be told off by him. He would often say little until the end, when he would sum up the key points in a few words. His engagingly Welsh-accented aphorisms included, "Do not believe, prove it for yourself. Do not ignore the feeling in your bones. Stand by the technical truth, however great the political or commercial pressures." And most remembered by his friends, "Floc chi non facio vera pre ceteris." I don't give a fig. Truth above all. He died in 2003, aged 83. Plane Tales is a featured segment of the Airline Pilot Guy Show Aviation podcast. Find us at airlinepilotguy.com.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada, yada. Okay, let's see here. I'm trying to regain control of my screen. Apparently, YouTube is doing odd things for all of us, not what it normally does. But,
apparently, the viewers are seeing the right thing, but...
Yeah. Although, I just assumed that when I got rid of all the little video thumbnails on my screen, that's exactly what everybody would be seeing.
No.
Viewing this, but no, they actually see all those thumbnails there, don't they?
Well, now that I've come back to my headphones, I have buzzing in both ears, so I'm going to leave and come back again because I don't know what's causing it.
Okay, why don't we do that? We'll just take a short tech break.
I'll be right
back. Okay. So during the we'll talk about the plane tail here once we resume our recording. But during the plane tail, we were kind of wondering why we were all seeing different things than we normally see when we're doing the plane tail.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's not nice tongue, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
What she said.
Getting a wet ear.
Sorry.
That's what she said.
Now I have buzzing in the left ear, not the right ear. I have no idea what's going on. I think it's Hangouts.
I think it is. I think Hangouts is doing strange things to us today.
It's really frustrating.
So take the left ear up.
Yeah.
There you go.
I guess. But the problem is it's been going back and forth.
Oh.
Like it switches.
Well, then when it goes to the other one, then do this.
Well, the last time it was both of them. So that's why I had to leave and come back. I don't know.
We'll just do sign language.
Okay, fine. I can do that.
That's not good.
Not good for
not good for a radio show. Yeah.
No, not really good at all. Wow, what a great plane tale, Captain Nick. That book sounds fascinating. It sounds like I might have to get my hands on that thing and read it.
It's not on your bookshelf?
No.
What?
I know.
Well, it's hard to find. It hasn't been in print for a while now, so you're going to have to dig around sort of old aviation bookstores, I think. The third edition, the one I'm holding up here, is the one I have, and I treasure it. I got it a few years before I left the Air Force, and it cost me £13 back in those days. So, but it is worth its weight in gold. Not just now as a slightly historic view of what it was considered to be like converting from prop-driven airplanes to your first big jet. That was really what it was designed for, to help people in that transition. But by the third edition, he had obviously moved on to the biggest of the big jets, the 747 and Concorde. But that's more or less the last one he wrote. But I thought the interviews I found, which I believe you should be able to listen to if you're interested in listening to the full set of interviews are on the Royal Aeronautical Society website. They have a series of interviews from all sorts of people. So just look for David Davies. So DP Davies, and you'll find some there. But he was a real character when you listen to him talk. He was he did not take any prisoners. He did not stand for any fools, and he had very definite ideas about the right and wrong about what an aircraft should be able to do before he would be willing to allow it to come onto the UK register. And he did not have a very high opinion of the FAA's attempts to certify various aircraft. So that's all quite interesting, if a bit controversial.
I can get it on Amazon right now.
Yep.
Well done.
1995.
Oh, well, that's cool. If you want to rent it.
Oh, no, you can buy it used for $19.95 US dollars.
Oh, well, I'd see if okay.
Either way.
Cool. Right. Good. I'm glad there are still some copies out there.
There's some copies floating around, apparently.
And apparently he wasn't afraid to express his opinion, then, you're saying, right?
Absolutely not. No, he said some quite damning things.
He had some very nice things to say about the 727. That was nice.
Yes, he did. He didn't like the way that it stalled with an RCFG, but he loved the airplane once they put a stick pusher in it. But I suspect that wasn't for the American version, and it was eventually taken out of the UK version. So I think that's what upset him a lot.
Yeah, well, I flew the 200, and all of our 200s had the stick pushers.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, now that's interesting, because I didn't realize that someone had eventually decided it was a good idea.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think every transport category airplane I've flown has a stick pusher.
Interesting. All right. Well, that's great. Someone's obviously his opinions might have carried some weight after all.
Yeah.
Mind you, there was quite a serious 727 accident. I think the guys forgot to put the pitot heats on, lost airspeed indication, and in the same way that the Air France pilots did, they pitched the airplane to a very steep attitude, trying to control the speed without realizing that it was an erroneous airspeed indicator, stalled it, and then got into a super stall and went in. I don't think a big thing was made of it, because they were just the two guys positioning the flight, or three guys. No passengers on.
I think the one, maybe this is a different one, but the one that I thought you were referring to had a sports team on. I think it was a hockey team or something.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, he didn't give the specifics of it. When he said he mentioned that he thought the aircraft was just being positioned, but it sounds like, if that sounds like a similar series of events, then that would probably be the accident.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick search. 727 pitot heat crash. I think it was in somewhere in New York State too, where it crashed.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. The first was the fatal crash of a Boeing 727 on December 1st, 1974. Northwest Airlines flight 6231. It crashed in Harriman State Park near Stony Point, New York. Had been chartered to pick up the Baltimore Colts professional football team in Buffalo. Oh, so I think
it was
maybe
before they picked them up.
Yeah. Okay. So I, for some reason, had associated the fact that the charter flight and the football and the whole thing, that they were actually on board the aircraft, but apparently not. Okay.
All right.
3 crew members on board. Yep. There it is. 1974.
Wow. By the way, for those who are Patreons, they will have heard quite a bit more about DP Davis and his stories, including his flying of the British V bombers, and his opinions of various other aircraft, which all I found fascinating, because there was more in writing that plane tale than I could fit into the time period. So, sometimes it's worth considering becoming a Patreon of the show, because you get those little extras. And I always try and feed something in if I've got a bit left over from the plane tale. So you've got a bit extra, a bit special.
As we said, you'll be glad you did. And so will we. All right. Well, very good. Let's see, moving on with our feedback folder. We have about an hour left in the show, maybe a little bit less, so we're going to try to knock out as many as we can today. Ralph Walker sent in this. Maybe your technical experts can explain how a radial engine is a jet. I think this might be a new geared turbofan. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. The sun is usually such a reliable source, he says. Saying that tongue-in-cheek, maybe? And, of course, he's talking about that crash that we have talked about on a couple of the previous episodes, the South Africa Convair 340 crash. And obviously, it's not even a turbo prop. It was a piston-powered radial engine.
But don't those pistons have carburetors? And don't those carburetors have jets?
Oh, there you go. That must be why the journalists...
I mean, the journalist is just so smart to never follow that.
Yeah.
To distill that down for us, for the public.
They're ruining our accuracy rating.
No, we're correcting theirs. So I think that gives us extra.
All right.
Double points for that.
Double points. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
Bonus accuracy.
Perfect.
Ours is going up.
That's what she said.
All right.
Excellent.
Next one is Texas Charlie, and he says, guys and gal, does this have any basis in reality? And he sends us a facebook.com video. Texas Charlie did. And did you have a chance to, any of you, look at this video?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Okay, well, I looked at it and I'm thinking to myself, maybe this is a joke? I mean, the way that the guy is the captain is manipulating this control yoke is almost, I mean, you know,
he's like, I'm watching it now. He's like doing.
It just looks ridiculous to me. And I'm thinking that, I don't know.
And someone in the background is saying a little right, a little left, a little right. I think that's what I heard.
And he's wearing Apple earphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's fine at Boeing and see how much his hands are moving. That's not.
What's that?
That's not typical of a Boeing.
Yeah, especially it looks like a 777 to me. And that would be fly-by-wire controlled with the conventional. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say about that one, Texas Charlie. It almost looks not real to me.
Oh, I personally think it is real.
Really?
Yeah,
Maybe he's just over controlling it. I have flown. I'm sure that
I think it's just fighting it a bit. I don't know whether it's a good technique or whether it's particularly gusty, but he does seem to be working very hard.
I sometimes fly with guys, and Dana, you probably know what I'm going to say, that especially when you get down like 50 feet and below, they really start overworking the controls, and you can actually feel the inputs that they're making, and it feels like you're in incredible turbulence. And then they somehow manage to get the thing down on the ground without pranging it on. And then they're standing in the door and everybody's praising them on what an amazing landing that was. And I'm thinking to myself, it was not, I mean, it was like perfectly smooth. There was no reason for that.
They're doing it for the glory, Jeff, for the praise.
It just makes me so upset when they do that and thinking, no, I mean, it was.
Meanwhile, you're landing where everything is totally smooth.
And then you prang it on.
And you prang it on, and then you get all the dirty looks out the door.
Yeah, and then you get the people in your
Navy pilot,
of people giving you a bad time about it. Anyway,
I don't know. I mean, the fact he had the earplug, the Apple headset in, I don't think that is very telling on it. But I think if you look at the actual runway and the way it looks, it doesn't look fake.
No, it doesn't. I mean, the video itself looks realistic. I'm not sure why he's wearing Apple headphones.
Yeah, but I just think with the Boeing, you wouldn't need to move the controls that much. I mean, that almost looks like an 88 movement.
He's moving them so much, Jenna. I don't think anything's actually happening to the airplane because he's not letting the control inputs sit for any length of time at all. As soon as he puts the control input in, he's reversing it. So all the control surface will be flapping around like it's going out of fashion, but the airplane won't really change its attitude much.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. That's a good observation, Nick. Very good observation.
All right, so Texas Charlie, I guess the verdict is, it's real, and there's no real good reason for him to be activating the controls that violently. Okay, continuing on, Scott, Hello, APG crew. AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, has a thing called Never Again. I was wondering if any one of y'all have a story like that. My story is that I'm a VFR pilot, and I learned that air traffic controllers are a big help. I was on a flight from Kennesaw, Georgia to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, when the weather was to be clear at the time I was to arrive. We all know that the weather people are never wrong. Just kidding, kinda. Anyway, I was about 40 to 50 miles out, found myself stuck on top. The ATC guys found an airport about 50 miles or so behind me that was reporting clear. So I turned around and went there. Landed safely with just under an hour of fuel left. Not a big deal, but yet it could have been worse if I had planned tighter on fuel. Lesson here is to get my IFR rating before going that far on top. Great show. I've been listening to your podcast so long, I don't remember what number it was, but you were doing it solo. Keep up the good work. By the way, congratulations, Captain Dana. Thanks.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, that
Thank
was Scott Wills. And yeah, so do you have a Never Again story that you're willing to share?
I think everyone's
Well,
got some. I wouldn't say just one, maybe some.
I've never done anything wrong.
Never anything that I wouldn't,
no,
do again. So, I think some of them come with, just like Scott was saying, there are things that you learn by experience. There's things that you learn from a textbook, and then there's things that you learn from experience, right? And things that you know in your mind to be legal or to be safe. But until you find yourself in that position and have to figure out how to get out of it in a safe manner, that's where the learning comes in. And that's when you realize, I probably don't want to do that again. So yeah, I think we've all been there, perhaps a time or two.
Yep. Yeah. If you've been flying as long as Nick and I have, and Dana, and Steph,
and me,
you're going to have at least one or more, sometimes many more stories that perhaps, Scott, when we're sitting at a bar some night after a few drinks, maybe we'll talk about. Probably not a good idea.
There is the old saying, there are those that have, and there are those that will. Exactly correct.
So true. So true.
But I think
and
your story here is a good example of the right thing to do. When you find yourself in a situation, confess that and get the help that you need. And they were able to guide you to safety with plenty of fuel left, and all's well that ends well.
And there are also old pilots and bold pilots, but very few old, bold pilots. So
another true statement. What's one of my favorites is that I used to have a plaque that had this on there that said that the people that think they know everything about aviation really piss off those of us who do.
That's a good one. I hadn't heard that one before, Jeff.
All right. Shall we move on to 8?
Yeah, none of us are willing to incriminate ourselves, I can tell.
Actually, I think if you listen back far enough, you may have heard some of my none of them are anything crazy, but just things that I probably wouldn't do again, or with hindsight looking back on, would have planned differently. So.
Yeah. I guess maybe I have so many of those stories that I just don't know which one to choose to share. So,
well, I'll tell a very quick one.
Oh yeah, and I can tell a quick one too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm on exercise in a 3-tank Phantom. So got the maximum fuel on board, and we're scrambled after an inbound raid that's coming towards the east coast of Scotland because it's an exercise, and they're the enemy, and we go roaring off in full burner to meet these guys as quickly as we can. They're low level over the ocean, pick them up, and we shoot one of them head on. It's a 4-ship of F-111s. Aardvarks there. So they're USAF F-111s, now in a Mildenhall or somewhere. And trying to drag a 3-bagger round the back, you haven't got a very high G turn you can do because of the G limits of 3 tanks on the aircraft, and we're not throwing them into the sea. This is war. So I get in behind, and we're several miles behind. I've got to close up to about a mile to be able to use the sidewinders. And they're sitting very low. We couldn't use the radar missiles. So I'm in full burner, coming chasing them up, and the aircraft's just eating fuel like it's going out of fashion. And I get up to the behind the rearmost guy at a mile, shoot him, and I sidestep past him, trying to get up to the front pair, and I can see the coast ahead. My navigator's calling the range of these aircraft, and I'm assuming they're attacking Lucas. And the fuel's going down, and I shoot the left hand of the front guy, and I'm coming across to take out the right hand one, and the low fuel lights come on. So I think, damn, I'm going to have to give this up. So I pulled out a burner and hoofed up to altitude and looked at the coast to see the airfield, because I'm thinking, well, I'm only about 10 or 15 miles from the coast now. I can just more or less glide in. And it's a piece of coast I'd never seen before, or at least I certainly didn't recognize. And I went, oh my God, where are we? So I've been chasing these guys, assuming they're attacking our airfield. They'd actually been going well to the south. And I looked up and went, oh my God. And the TACAN, the Tactical Air Navigation Beacon, a bit like a VOR DME, but we had for military aircraft, locked onto the Lucas TACAN, and it was 52 miles away. And I went, oh my God, we're not going to get there, because I'm looking at the fuel and it's the needles are almost rested on the bottom. Anyway, I said to Tony, we'll have to go Edinburgh, that's closer. And he said, don't bother, it's just as far away from the angle we were between the two airfields. So I just went into complete cold sweat panic mode, and we dribbled our way back, and I could just hardly take my eyes off the fuel gauges as they're kind of bouncing on zero. And there was a simulated missile engagement zone around the airfield. I came onto air traffic. I said, I'm not doing the normal ADIS approach, which is a straight in from 10 miles. I'm coming from the south. I'm just going to join base and turn directly on finals. So I did exactly that. And I just came, pointed straight at the end of the runway, the closest bit of tarmac, dirted the airplane up at the last possible moment, cranked it around the corner and stuffed it on the ground with a huge sigh of relief. And when we got in, the engineers refueled the airplane, and their eyebrows were just going higher and higher and higher with the amount of fuel they were putting on. And it was just a huge learning lesson from me. All the boss wanted to know was why I'd been shot down, because our own Rapier missile guys had decided that because I wasn't following the safe lane into the airfield, they'd engaged me, and they apparently shot me down. So there you go.
Insult to injury.
Yeah. And all my backseater, who was a much more senior and hairy old navigator, he said, well, you're not going to do that again, are you? And I went, no. No, sir.
Nope.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
My story's not nearly exciting. I don't need to tell it.
It doesn't involve shooting airplanes
No,
running out of fuel.
Not at all.
Oh.
No.
Well, tell it anyway.
All right. Well, I'll give the Cliff Notes version of it, the very abbreviated version. But basically, it was one of my very first kind of longish planned cross-country flights right after I had received my private pilot certificate. And I was planning it from the eastern part of North Carolina to the western part of North Carolina in a 172. And I was pretty meticulous about it because it was the first time I was going quite that distance, basically solo by myself. Not solo in the aircraft, certainly, but a relatively long cross-country flight. So I looked at weather, fuel planning, everything that you need to do for safe flight. And everything looked good to go. And of course, the day arrived, and I forget exactly what delayed me initially, but there was something beyond my control that caused me to get a little bit later start in the day than I had planned. And still everything looked okay. Got the airplane packed up, got up in the air, doing my thing with flight following, and started crossing the state. Got about halfway across the state and realized that the weather was not as forecast, much like Scott found in his scenario where the ceilings were lower than forecast. So that forced me to be a little bit lower than I had planned to be. I was planning to fly basically into the mountainous region of Western North Carolina. And because I had left later, and because the weather was not as forecast, I was not as high as I wanted to be. Still safe for clearing the terrain, but still not as high as I wanted to be, but given my level of familiarity with the area. And also because I left later, and there were also stronger than forecast headwinds, I was not making as good of time as I had planned. So it became dark before I got to my destination. So now I'm flying over mountainous terrain that I'm not terribly familiar with from the air, in the dark with, cloud layer above me. And now I can't tell exactly how high above me it is. So that was just one of those things where, in hindsight, if I'd known it was going to be like that or turn out like that, I may have not continued the journey as far as I did. But it turned out fine. And I actually had great help from air traffic controllers in that instance as well. So
never again.
Did you have an instrument ready at that point, Steph?
No.
Yeah.
No, I did not. But
yes.
It was, I actually, talking to the controllers with flight following, one of them did ask if I was familiar with the terrain, and I said no. I said from the ground, yes. From the air, no. But no, we had plenty of clearance for both terrain and weather. It was just being a lowish time private pilot, perhaps a little bit beyond my comfort level at the time. I think now I would not be nearly as concerned about, especially not having an instrument rating and everything else. But at the time, it was a learning experience, where everything can it's all the little things that add up to get you to a point where you didn't anticipate you were going to be, basically. I thought I was going to be well on the ground before sunset, not have nearly the type of weather I had to contend with, and it didn't pan out the way it was planned exactly.
Yeah, that happens.
But I didn't. No one shot me down at the end of the day.
That's good. and you still had fuel in your tank.
Still had plenty of fuel, actually. Yeah. That part did work out.
Well, that's good.
Planned. Yeah.
Oh well, Dana, do you want to share anything, or are you going to be like me and we're just going to shut up?
I mean, compared to that, I've got a few stories, but
I'm sure you do.
I'm just going to let it go.
Okay. Well, Texas Charlie, thanks again for, I think it was Texas Charlie that sent that piece of feedback in, right?
Scott.
I'm sorry.
Scott.
My bad. Scott, hopefully that was some help. Yeah, well, not help, but I hope that we answered sort of your question about the never again. And I agree. That's one of the most engaging parts of the AOPA magazine, those kind of columns. I think Flying Magazine has something like that as well. I forgot what the title of that column is, but it's always one of the best ones to read when somebody tells you a story that.
Well, they're good to read, especially when they have, certainly when they have good outcomes, but they're good to read because you want to know how people got to those good outcomes in case you find yourself in a similar situation. So I don't think there's any, harm in sharing it as long as, for the most part, I think stories that are being shared, everything is legal. It's just a situation you didn't really want to be in. And how did you deal with it? How did you contend with it? And what would you do differently in the future to avoid it?
And what is the saying? I'd rather learn from somebody else's mistakes than
Absolutely.
my own.
Yep.
All right. Oh, I love that picture in the background of Nick's. Start talking, Nick.
Hello. Yes, it's Mustache Lovers Incorporated.
Yes. It's Jeff rocking the cradle.
The lovely Barbara Parrish. I was just sneaking a kiss in for the photo.
She's just left the chat room, which is a shame.
It's a shame. Maybe she spotted it and then decided I better get out of here.
Time to go.
Very sensible.
Okay, I'm going to skip to 13. We have some audio feedback from Miss Josine. She says, "Hey, Jeff, behold my second feedback." Aww.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm so glad you did that.
It's about quality of life. For context, the pilots being interviewed were working in the United States and in the UK in the early 2000s. And it looks like the author struggled to find participants at the higher end of the pay scale, so it presents a pretty bleak picture. I didn't explicitly ask these questions in the feedback, mea culpa, but the main things I'm curious about are, A, how relatable are these stories to your own experience? Well, you know what? I'm not going to read her questions yet. I'm going to let her do her audio feedback, and then we'll read her questions. That'll make more sense, I think. So take it away, Rosie.
Hello, my beautiful pilots. The dog days of summer are full. Why do we say that? Dog days. Well, Jeff asked me last night when I'm going to do some French stuff again. So let me shoehorn a little digression. The French word for heat wave is canicule, and the origin of that word is canicula, which is Latin for puppy. Relatedly, you have canis, Latin for dog. So that tells you at least that it's a very old expression. I looked it up, of course. It's astronomy, my least favorite science. The dog star, Sirius, rises right before late summer. Naturally, the ancients reasoned that it was the cause of all that unpleasant weather that characterizes the season. Anyway, it's hot, it's humid, yet it never rains. And the impending collapse of society that these extremes pretend are still 30 years away. And so we relax and soak up the sun, enjoy drinks on the patio with the ones we love. Some of you are flying a lot more so that other people can have a good time. In French, we say, profiter du soleil, profit from the sun, but really take advantage of the sun while it's here. Not me, though. I prefer the air-conditioned confines, the flickering fluorescent glow of academical libraries, hours of solitary rapture weaving through the stacks, adding to my vast array of useless knowledge. Yeah, I'm fun at parties. It was there that I found something to entertain you, hopefully. Items from a book by the name of A Sociology of Commercial Flight Crew, written by Simon A. Bennett in the year 2006. Sociology is the study of society, and thus, a sociology of airline pilots might attempt to answer questions like, what types of people become airline pilots? What values and beliefs do those people have? How do those values affect the work they do, for good or for worse? You get the idea. It was questions like these, actually, that brought me here. I remember reading somewhere that pilots were likelier than average to be Catholic, and curious about why that might be and whether it might mean anything, I Googled Catholic pilot, something like that. And your show is what popped up in like page 3 or 4 of results. So for my feedback today, I'm going to share some items from this book on sociology of commercial airline pilots, specifically for today, related to the theme of family and quality of life. I'll start with a little amuse-bouche, a morsel I came across in the appendix in the back of the book. A pilot being interviewed, he was trying to get his wife pregnant, but his rosters were so demanding that they couldn't conceive for many months because his schedule kept him away from home each time that his wife was ovulating. So the first thought that comes to my mind is, you can't trade shifts? And do you ever talk to crew scheduling to attend to those sorts of delicate matters? My second thing that comes to my mind is I always thought that you could freeze sperm and just use it later. Perhaps that's what the chief pilot told him, unsympathetic to his woes. Okay, the next item is from an interview with another pilot, once again on the topic of career versus family. And I quote, "People do become serial husbands. Apparently, there was an ex-British Airways Concorde captain who ended up flying small turboprops for City Express because that was all he could get. He was in his 60s, and all he had in life was a 23-year-old girlfriend, a one-bedroom flat in Crawley, and a Ford Escort diesel van, because all the money, of course, had gone on every other wife and girlfriend." What a schlemazel. There's your Yiddish word for the day. It means a person who is perpetually unlucky. So I can provide a little more context to this statement. I looked into it a bit. Hopefully I'm above 50% accuracy. So first off, I figured out that this guy was flying a Dash 8. And it mentions he was living in Crawley, which is where Gatwick Airport is, working for City Express, an airline that only existed from 2002 to 2006. I'll get a little bit more into that later. I looked at air traffic in and out of Gatwick during that period. Not very many Dash 8s, practically none from that airline. In other words, Gatwick was not his base. In other words, he was commuting. More detective work. This airline, City Express, it was a subsidiary of British Airways, established in 2002 out of the merger of multiple regional airlines purchased by BA in the 1990s, which probably was not the happiest atmosphere. Anyway, in 2006, they attempted to adapt into a low-cost carrier model like EasyJet, changing their name to BA Connect, or Bacon for short. However, it was not terribly successful, and by the end of 2006, they had been purchased by Flybe. Now, considering that he was already in his 60s at the time, it's quite possible that this guy had retired and that none of the following applies. However, let's assume that he was still flying that year, 2006. What happens when the airline you work for gets bought out by another? You get seniority list integrations, you get relocations, you get the apparently rather dodgy provisions of what is known as a TUPE transfer, or TUPE transfer in the UK. In other words, you get a flurry of jargon that equates to the following. You're 64, let's say, in the dotage of your flying career. You've come to terms with your fate. You like to see yourself as a fatherly presence to these young pilots, making up for the fact that your own children don't speak to you. You regale the line with bawdy tales from your glory days on the Concorde. Deep down, you know they feel sorry for you, but you do your best not to think about it. Then one day, you get the news about the merger, and with it, a final humiliation to end your career on, a plunge in seniority that might force you into reserves, force you to relocate, or find yourself a crash pad. Defeated at last, you cash in your chips. There's this idea I hear expressed from time to time on this show that, as in war, a pilot's life is nothing more than periods of long boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror. And for that reason, that realistic stories about flying, without the potential for carnage and smoldering wreckage, couldn't possibly be interesting. Well, I think that you're selling yourself short. I'll admit it's easier to rely on plane crashes to supply the drama, but I think that a great novel could be written about a Concorde pilot so incompetent or so troublesome or so unlucky that he ended up downgraded to turboprop. But maybe, at long last, he finds true love in the arms of that 23-year-old. And to this day, in 2018, she visits him still, each morning, in his nursing home. Sometimes these things work out. I did have a third item on the family, but I'm already past 10 minutes, so I will say that for a future feedback. And for a future feedback, there is another excerpt in this book related to safety and flight operations, that I'd like to get your opinion about. Stay tuned. And yes, French. I will have a feedback for you with more French words. That's it. Take care. Tailwinds and all that jazz.
Always enjoy feedback, especially audio feedback from you, Josine. And thank you for the lesson about the dog days of summer. That's interesting. I did not know that, but apparently a lot of people did in our chat room.
Yeah, I had never even, just one of those expressions that I use and never even thought about it.
Yeah.
Never
I always
wondered
think
why.
of like a dog just laying down underneath the porch or something like that.
Yeah,
trying
where
to
it's just
stay out of
like
the heat.
hot and,
Yeah.
they're just kind of lethargic.
Had nothing to do, knew nothing about the fact that it was associated with astronomy.
Nope.
So the physio, what was it called? I'm struggling now with the report that she was talking about. Not physiology. That's
like when you
sociology.
Sociology, yes.
Oh man, it must be getting late for me. Time for the
Sorry,
nursing home for me.
I wasn't sure what you were trying to ask about.
Yeah. Thanks for all the help, everyone.
You're welcome.
Well, if we could see inside that devious brain of yours, we stood a chance. But we were all
sitting here
struggling.
going,
Where the hell's he
what
going
is
with this?
Yeah, I know. I think what it is, you're sitting there listening to me going, "Oh, he's digging a hole." It was he's digging deeper. Oh, I'm not going to help him. I'm just going to see where this goes.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. I can help out a little bit here, by the way. The reason he would have left his fine airline and flying Concords was almost certainly because in the old days, BA pilots had a contract that only ran to the age 55. Legally, they were allowed to fly in the UK to 60, but not according to their contract. So you had to leave BA at the age of 55, which would have given him 5 years struggling to find a job. And there aren't many airlines that would want to take on an aged captain for just a few years. So he might have struggled to find employment and keep the money coming in to pay all the various alimonies. So I think I can probably explain that bit.
I was going to, that was my hunch as well, Captain Nick. I thought maybe they had the same, 60 was the maximum retirement age for pilots rule. And the fact that he was in his 60s meant to me that obviously he couldn't be flying the Concorde anymore for BA.
Mm-hmm.
If he was in his 60s, then there was a rule for a while that you could work as a first officer in up to 65. Some of our captains did that, those that had extra marriages. And it wasn't until quite recently have you been allowed to hold a captaincy to 65.
How do you get those extra marriages?
So the ones who were, who stayed with one marriage or maybe never married throughout their entire lives, they could comfortably retire at 55 with the salaries and pensions they'd earned.
Oh, in BA for sure, yes. And particularly if you've been a Concorde pilot, because they're on the biggest pay scales. So
I'd heard that the general financial advice given to me when I was first hired almost 30 years ago was stay with your first wife. Don't try to start your own business because it will fail. And don't or stay in your first officer's house. Don't get a bigger house.
How does it go? One house, one spouse, one something or other.
Mouse.
No.
One mouse. I don't know. One louse.
There's something. There's a third part to that which I can't remember, but it's a cute saying for financial stability. One house, one spouse. This is why I will struggle with money my whole life because I can't remember the third one.
Dang it. Yeah, if you want good financial advice from a pilot, whatever they tell you, do the opposite. That's so true. Okay, so going back to Josine's feedback, she says, how relatable are these stories to your own experiences as pilots? And the first part of it, she was talking about the guy that was whining because he couldn't get his wife pregnant when he couldn't be home when she was ovulating. And I'm thinking, that sounds pretty lame to me. I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. I mean, I can't tell you.
Life finds a way. Isn't that a quote from like Jurassic Park?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, every single Christmas, with the exception of one, since I've been flying for Acme Airlines, and most of that time, 19 years of that, I was not senior in the least bit. I was very junior. But I managed, because I had the will to make sure that I was going to be home for Christmas, to make sure that would happen. And you had to work hard to do it. But to me, it sounds like that was just an excuse that, well, I couldn't get my schedule to be home when my wife
sounds
was
like someone who didn't actually want children.
And there's absolutely no reason why your wife can't get pregnant, even if you can't get home while she's ovulating.
Yes.
It just won't be your child.
With another person?
The postman. Milkman.
Well, I could say so many things on that. I really could. I mean, on a serious note, serious note, actually, when Julie and I were trying to, I was very junior. I had no control of my schedule, and most Christmases I've actually spent away from home. So it really is relative where you sit in seniority as to whether you can control or not control your schedule enough. And as everybody knows, we don't have children. That's part of the reason.
Yeah, but I most of my experience, most of those Christmases in my first 19 years, I was not. I mean, all of them, I was not senior at all. I was very junior, like fourth from the bottom, junior, and I just knew the rules that said when you're on reserve, if you fly a certain number of hours before, at a certain point, then you are not compelled anymore to fly anymore. That may have been a different situation with the airline that you were with, Dana, but the airline that I was with. For many of those 19 years, I flew my tail off, picked up every bit of flying that I could, and just had to be very clever about it. And then I got to the point, usually by about the 21st of the month, where I had maxed out my hours. I could not fly anymore. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but I didn't have to, and I could be home for Christmas. So, there's some luck involved there, I guess, as well. But
yes.
I'm not saying everybody's situation is different, but I don't know. That's just my take on it. And then we talked about the Concorde pilot, what we think is the real story behind all that. And anything else to add to that?
No, great feedback.
Yeah, good feedback.
Excellent.
Thank you, Josine, for that. And we're going to have some more audio feedback from one of our friends and community members, Stephen, and he may have some news for us. So take it away, sir.
Hey, APG crew, Stephen Ivy.
I should have done something to make this louder. Hang on. I didn't have a chance to manipulate that audio file before we did the show today, so let me see if I can make an adjustment on a volume slider. Just bear with me if you don't mind.
Pilot from West Georgia. Finally,
is that better? Can you hear that all right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start from the beginning.
Much better.
Awesome.
Hey, APG crew, Stephen Ivy, the pilot from West Georgia. Finally going to leave you some feedback on what I've been up to since the last time I actually updated you on surveying and everything, which I think was way back in like February or March. Since then, really been doing, finishing the survey, flying out for that spring season. Got done with the spring season about the second week of May, and I went ahead and started applying to some airlines about that time frame, because I was getting pretty close to hours, but I wasn't really there yet. But they say if you're in a couple months of getting your hours, go ahead and apply so you can get a class ticket and all that. So I applied at a couple of different regional airlines here in the United States. Two of them called me back the day after I applied and asked me to come interview. So the week after I got done with the survey spring season, I sent 2 reviews for these 2 airlines. The first one was a little strange. This Acme Junior carrier, they're a large one here in the States, and I went out to the interview, and I was expecting there to be a good many people because, it's a pilot shortage. There should be lots of people interviewing for this job. And I get out there, and it turns out I'm the only person interviewing all day. So that was a little intimidating, but I felt like the interview went pretty well. Mostly general questions about your background, how'd you become a pilot? What's your experience flying? Have you ever flown in a jet? Any military experience? Things like that, which I haven't been in the military or have any jet experience. But anyway, so that interview went pretty good. And then I flew back home from that interview and then left the next day to go to another interview for I would say a decently sized regional carrier as well here in the United States. And I got up to where the interview was at and actually got a phone call from the people I interviewed with the day before offering me a job. So I told them I'd let them know because I had one more interview with this company that I was interviewing at, and I wanted to just see how I did with it. And they said, okay, just give us a call back. So the next day, I went into the second interview with another Acme Junior carrier, knowing I already had a job if I wanted it. So I tried not to let that, play into my head too much. So I got to this interview, and I was one of 20 people that day, so that made me feel a little bit better. A lot of older, or I should say, more experienced pilots were there. A lot of ex-military guys, and some guys that had actually been furloughed from some legacy carriers back in the day that had left the airline industry altogether, were trying to get back in. That interview was a little bit different, just the way they did things and stuff, but it went really well. Didn't have any issues with any of the questions they asked me or anything like that, and they actually offered me a position as soon as I finished the interview. And I told them I'd let them know the next day I had another offer to consider. So I got back home, and after the flight back and everything, I decided I was going to go with my first choice. So I got offered a job to work at this Acme Junior carrier flying a CRJ. That's the Canadair regional jet, also known as the Bombardier A regional jet. So I'll be flying either a 2, a 7, or a 9 since they've got all three. So I'll be flying one of those in the near future. So after that, I went back to the survey company because obviously I didn't have my 1,500 hours. It was about 300 short by the time May rolled around, so I had to do some more flying. So this the summer season is a little bit different than our winter season. They fly at a little bit lower of an altitude. They fly at 1,500 feet AGL, taking the pictures and stuff. So that was a big change from being high up to being really low to the ground. I also moved up to a 182, which is it's really not that much different than a 172. It's heavier, faster, lands a little bit differently. So flew for that a little while, and then I got moved over to a 206, and it was a lot different than the 182 that I've been flying, just a little bit longer. Actually had to think about what you were doing when you were landing as far as planning out your speed, your descent and everything. Really solid airplane though, like it landed really good. It's not like the 172 where it wants to sit there and float and doesn't want to land this thing. If you set it down, it's going to set itself down and land. So that was nice. Got to go to some places I'd already been, but let's see. The summer season I went to Nashville, Charleston, South Carolina, Rochester, New York, Portland, Maine, which I got to see the main man Micah while I was up there. It was really nice visiting with him. And I also saw Hillel while I was going from Charleston to Rochester, and had lunch with him one day while I was working. Let's see, from Portland, I went back to South Bend and swapped aircraft out. Got another 206, and then went to Albany, New York, and then Springfield, Massachusetts, and Providence, Rhode Island. And that brought me up to about the last week of July, and I hit my hours at that point. So I crossed 1,500 hours. I'm not sure the exact date. It was sometime in July, though, that third week of July. But I officially hit 1,500 hours then. And I went ahead and turned in my notice at the survey company and everything. And I contacted the Acme Junior carrier I was going to work with and told them I was ready to get a class date and everything. So I am starting my training at Acme Junior this coming up weekend. And I'll be out there for about 2 months learning to fly the CRJ. So that's going to be really exciting. Oh, and also, I'm sure that some of you might have seen pictures and stuff, but I also was able to go to Oshkosh this year. Got to see Glenn, Jennifer, Dispatcher Mike, Dave Abbey, Hillel and his son, and then a lot of other podcast people that were up there, and then some other APG fans that just stopped by or pulled me aside and said, hey, because I was wearing an APG shirt. So that was a very fun experience. I'll definitely have to do it again, hopefully next year if I get the time off and everything. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know where I was at with everything, and hope everybody's doing well. And I'll update y'all about my training hopefully in the near future. Take care.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, we've wondered how it was going with you. We knew you were doing the survey flying, building up your hours, and we knew it was just going to be a matter of time before you got on with a regional carrier. And I guess best thing we can do right now is just say,
Yay! Congratulations!
Muzzle, as we say in our religion, muzzle tough.
Muzzle tough. Right. And we hope to hear more about your career progression, and look forward to seeing you around the campus. I think he said he was going to be based in Atlanta, didn't he, Dana?
I didn't hear he never said in that feedback.
I think he is, though. I think he shared that with me. So anyway.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's been a long road and doing some really boring flying, a lot of it, and there's survey work, but fantastic job. And well done with the interviews.
Yes. Obviously, he nailed them all and got offers from several companies. And
what's not to like about Stephen? He's a great kid, great guy. He's going to have a great career ahead of him. So really proud of him.
Absolutely.
And hoping that he'll be senior enough to bid his schedule so that he can attend Oshkosh next year, when I think more of us from the APG will be there.
By next year, he'll be a captain. So,
true. A junior captain.
Probably very true.
Oh well, we'll see. Thanks, Stephen. Please make sure that you continue to keep us.
Send us more updates.
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that people who listen to the show who want to be where you are now would like to hear.
Just like Nick, the guy that at the beginning of the show where we had the audio feedback from Pure, he's doing the same thing that Stephen was doing, building up those hours at the survey company. And before you know it, I'm sure Nick will be sending us feedback, just as Stephen did, that he's got on with SkyWest or one of those out there. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Or was I not supposed to say what actual carrier he? Oh well, I'll edit that in post. Beep. Steph knows what that means.
Yes,
I won't.
I do.
Okay. Stephen also sent us. No, that's a Stephen from San Jose.
There's like 3 different Stevens here in the feedback altogether.
And they're not
They're not the same, Stevens.
Oh, I misunderstood your note to me there, Steph. I thought you said they were.
It's like Steve,
okay.
Steven with a V, and Steven PH.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then let's get back, or try to get back on track. I believe 8 was the one I left off with. Chris said something about tray table troubles. A new one for me tonight is a frequent flyer flying home after a business trip. The passenger across the aisle from me in JetBlue Mint, which is spectacular, by the way, before pushback, told the flight attendant his tray table wasn't straight. He had it pulled out and it was simply angled down on one side, but barely. I couldn't believe he was complaining, but to the flight attendant's credit, he said he'd have someone look at it. So I saw him go tell the captain, and sure enough, a maintenance person showed up a few minutes later. The tech wasn't able to fix it on the spot and walked toward the cockpit just as our departure time came and went. I leaned over and told the passenger, this is going to cause a delay. He looked at me and still seemed more worried about his barely tilted tray table than the 170 people who wanted to depart on time. I decided to get up and approach the crew and offer to sit in his seat. After all, I just wanted to depart on time, and I've dealt with warped tray tables many times without a peep. The captain got out of his seat, approached me and said, nope, sorry, we're going to have to take a delay. That egg is already cooked, meaning he had reported it, and policy apparently dictated that it needed to be fixed or made inoperative before departure. The crew and nearby passengers were visibly annoyed at this selfish passenger. We ended up leaving late after the decision was made to make the tray table inop. So my question is this. Is there really a need to delay a flight due to a slightly warped tray table that still stows just fine? Why couldn't the captain have come back sooner and talked some sense into this guy before calling maintenance? And what would you have done? Thanks as always for all the great APG awesomeness. Class Bravo Chris from Kilo Sierra, Quebec, Lima, private pilot. And that's an airport up near Palo Alto, I believe. SQL. It's somewhere in the Bay Area.
Is it?
I think so. I think we've
I'll check our accuracy rating here because I can't.
Yeah, I think we got the last time I attempted to locate it. I think I put it somewhere in Utah, but I think
San Carlos, California.
San Carlos. There we go.
In the Bay Area. Yeah. You are correct. Ding.
Ding. Oh, where's my bell? Hang on. I got to play the bell.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Wow. No, that's not the bell.
B. Press B.
I'm trying to. There we go. But it may see sometimes I press the keyboard shortcuts, but if I don't have that window in focus, it does something different.
Change your glasses.
No, I need to. I have the single vision glasses right now, and the stuff that's so close. This thing is so close to me that it's hard for me to read these words. Yeah, it's tough getting old. Anyway, so Captain Nick,
yes, sir.
Purser comes up and says, this guy's got some issue with his tray table. What do you want to do? You want to call are you going to call maintenance and have them come out and take a look at it?
I usually go as long as it doesn't delay us.
Yeah.
But and I can have maintenance come on the airplane. They can go, it's fine, you can take it. And I don't have to put anything in the tech log. I don't have to decide whether it's inop or not. But I'm not going to go down and look at his tray table for a start. I'm way too busy at that point of the flight. Yeah. So I just don't have time to leave the flight.
It's beneath your duties.
Exactly.
Perfectly
so
honest.
I do rely on the cabin crew to a certain extent to say, this is fixable, this is not, this is fine, it's not really an op. Or they could just go, oh, well, we'll just give you a training lap and we'll get it fixed on the next sector. It sounds to me like having called the maintenance out, they were slow turning up. And the captain felt obliged to put something in the tech log about it, and so it was all going to take too long. So, really and honestly, this is happening back in the cabin, and this is dealt with the by the cabin crew. If they have a maintenance issue, then I usually try and, if it's close to departure time, I usually try and make sure it's absolutely essential before I actually get a maintenance guy out there, because I know it's going to take 10 minutes for him to get to the airplane and 10 minutes for him to fix it minimum. And if 5 minutes from pushing, I usually try and go, can we take it? Is there any way we can take it? Can we move him to another seat? And if another passenger is willing to sit in his seat, so wow, brilliant.
Right.
Fixed. Let's go.
Unfortunately, the timing in this case was a little off. By the time he volunteered to do that, as he said, the egg was already cooked.
Yeah.
Meaning, and I'm sure that what he meant was, yes, what you're saying, Captain Nick, he had entered it into the tech log or the logbook.
Yeah, I never write anything in the tech log until it's absolutely essential. I mean, particularly on the way home, there are some captains that will sit there and fill out the tech log before they land, just so that they save time when on the ground. No, never do that, because you might divert, and then you've got all those entries which now you have to solve. Usually, because there's rarely maintenance people at a diversion, certainly in my kind of operation.
Right.
You're going to have to fix all that. So I never write anything in the tech log until I'm actually wheels on where I want to be.
Yeah, and you understand the implications of what you're doing.
Exactly. Yes.
So, you write up, well, this is the last leg on this airplane, and I'm about to go home anyway, and this armrest is just not quite right. Well, what you don't realize is when you write up something on the seat, that is like basically a no-go item. If they can't fix it, then guess what? Then they got to replace the seat, and then chances are you have a flight canceled because of it. And I just want to tear my hair out when I see somebody do something like that. What do you think, Dana?
Oh, I just had my seat. I just had to write it up last trip, as a matter of fact. The darn thing wouldn't lock in the vertical position.
Your seat.
That's why Jeff has no hair.
That's right.
Yeah.
I had no choice. I mean, it was truly a flight issue, because the right side of there's two locking mechanisms, one on the left side, one on the right side, and the right side locking mechanism would not lock in height. So I only had the left locking mechanism holding the airplane. So they ended up just changing out the seat.
I can't tell you how many times I've flown airplanes with the seat little listing.
Yeah, but you're about half my weight.
Well, not quite.
And
not more than half your weight.
Quite skilled at landing the aircraft. If I banged it in, next thing I know, I'd be on the floor. The thing breaking.
I mean, you make a good point. I mean, there are things to write that are important with the seat, but I mean, there are some other things that aren't really that important, like the seat cover, or the cushion worn out or something like that. And I'm not sure that everybody quite understands what you're doing when you enter that in the logbook.
Yeah, I mean, there's arbitrary things that don't need to be put in the logbook. Well, let me rephrase that. There are things that are that we. I don't want to put this so that we don't get in trouble.
I think maybe we just stop right there. And
I think everyone got the gist of.
Yeah.
It's you've got to be legal and safe, and that's the most important thing in anything. Anytime I look at something, I look at it is it legal and is it safe? So and I always go by that. So as long as I'm consistent with that, I can never get in trouble. I dot all my I's and cross my T's. So that's my true answer to the question that was asked regarding
duly recorded.
It's by Chris. So
one of the last trips that I flew, I was flying with this guy, and he was just on his own putting stuff in the logbook, or like write-ups, and I'm going,
what are you doing?
Dude,
stop.
Talk to me first before you ask me if that's something that I want you to put in the logbook. Don't do it on your own unilaterally.
Yeah. I mean, in something like that, I mean, if you're in a outstation in an LED, or one of those LED, not the LED, what's it called? The
little pixels.
Pixel.
Yeah.
If a little pixel is burned out, all right, it just happened. It just saw a little pixel go out. That's really not a safety of flight issue. It's really not technically a real big issue at all. But you get somebody that's really adventurous and decides to put that in the logbook, and you're in Columbia, South Carolina. Well, that's it.
Good luck.
It's not. Yeah, good luck. So you got to use great judgment on that, and I absolutely get what you're talking about. I mean, you as the captain, me now as the captain, anything that's going to go into that logbook, we need to have a conversation before it goes into that logbook to see if it's something that is really of
That
utmost
should be
importance.
one logbook, yeah.
I mean, this whole thing with the tray table, that is actually a cabin discrepancy. It's completely different from anything that has anything to do with us. So, you
Right.
know,
That's just a passenger item.
Yep, exactly correct. The passenger convenience item, it's not a safety issue, and there's a completely different book for that the flight attendants can write their stuff up on.
Now, if this is a seat that happened to be in an exit row and the table could not be stowed, then that's a safety of flight issue. You know, that's a legitimate thing.
Correct.
But anyway, Class Bravo Chris, I think that we answered that pretty well.
You be the judge.
Yeah, you be the judge of that. Okay, I think we're over our time, and thank you for hanging in there with us. If you're still listening, dear listeners, for joining us today on the 335th episode of the Airline Pilot Go Show. And we had a great time. I hope you enjoyed listening to us. And if you want to learn more about the show, we have this very nice website called the airlinepilotguy.com. And you can learn about the crew and the community and the coffee fund and so much more. And we also have apps for iPhones and Androids. And we're also on social media.
You can head over to Twitter. Our handle there is @APG Crew. You can find our individual Twitter account information pinned to the top of that page. You can also head over to Facebook, facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Interact with the community there. You can post longer things than you can post on Twitter if you're so inclined, if you like extra verbiage. And yeah, all kinds of great community interaction, both places, information about meetups and other important things related to the podcast. Find us there.
And I was hoping that since I'm in Baltimore, where Hillel is located, that he'd be able to do this in person. But no, he's out of town. He heard I was coming.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1. Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thank you, Hillel. And until next time, wishing all of you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
So long. Have a great time.
Ta-da!
Isn't it so long? And thanks for all the fish or something like that.
That's the one.
Or something like that.
Yeah. Recorder.
Oh my God! I just about drowned in drinking my own water. Oh my! I took one sip and it didn't go down the right tube. Went down the wrong tube.
And I gotta say something.
Oh man!
I hate when that happens.
Oh, that hurts when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's stinging.
Hang in there, man.
I hope I don't die publicly here.
Oh, that would
be tragic.
That'd be great viral video, though. I have to say.
Thanks.
It would really increase our numbers.
Oh, it could. Yeah, we could get a lot of publicity.
We could actually be on World News Tonight.
Yeah.
What is it?
Airline pilot dies while doing
There's
podcast
no such
drinking
thing
water.
as bad publicity.
I'm sorry you're hearing that.
What's going on there?
I just stopped my recorder, and this program that I'm using now automatically goes back to the very beginning and just starts playing.
I gotcha.
So
recorder is stopped.
Recorder stopped. Dana?
Mine has stopped it as well. I'm going to the restroom. I'll be back.
All right. Yeah, and I think I'm going to need, because of my bandwidth hiccups here and there, I think it only happened when Nick was speaking. And so I'm thinking for sure I'll probably need to use yours, Nick.
It's already uploading.
Oh, sweet. Okay. And we have a little chore to do after the show here quickly before Nick goes to sleep on us. And
Too late.
Or Dana dies.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, we're 2 out of 4 on that. Oh, well.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody in the chat room for hanging out with us today. And we hope you enjoyed the show. We always enjoy having you with us. And I always enjoy watching and reading your conversation, especially Micah. Thanks a lot, Micah.
It's over? Good.
It's so polite.
Thank God.
Such a nice chap.
Yeah.
We do see everything you guys write.
Yeah. Did you know that?
Even if we don't have a chance to respond right in that moment, we are reading everything.
Yeah, that's funny. Sometimes people will ask me a question like we're in the middle of the show. And I'm thinking, well, I can't just stop and
I know, like I can't just answer that right now. I'm in the middle of looking at something important for the show.
But most of you understand that we can't do that unless we're in the midst of a plane tale or something like that.
Yeah, because we're not listening to that.
Yeah, no one listens to those.
Talking about the chat room?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't forget. I'm sorry.
The what?
I said that's what I kind of figured. I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry
you
for
went to the little boys' room.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to say you're sorry for anything, sir.
I've drank almost 1.5 liters of water since we started the show, so I'm trying to clean out my body.
See my new water jug here?
What is that?
It's 64 ounces of water.
Wow. Is that some kind of an insulated jacket on it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it's an insulated container in the first place with another insulated jacket. So,
that looks bigger than the what do they call the things that you get from the beer place?
A growler.
Growler. It looks bigger than a growler.
Aren't growlers also 64 ounces?
Well, maybe it looks like the same exact size as a growler.
Yeah.
That's a lot of damn water.
It is. I don't drink all of that in one day, to be honest. Actually, I usually never fill it up all the way. Usually about half.
This is my fourth one this size today.
Wow.
That's a lot of water.
What's wrong with you guys?
I'm flushing.
It's hot here.
Do you have a leak or something?
Yeah.
A puddle in the seat.
Getting blood work done tomorrow. I'm flushing my body.
Oh. Okay, well,
you'll probably be anemic in that case.
Hyponatremic.
Is that when you're overly hydrated?
Yeah, it's when you have more fluid basically than sodium. So you have...
sir, we can't find any blood here. It's only water.
Yes.
I mean, I do that when I'm going to donate blood, so I have a little bit higher volume in my system, so I don't feel faint and want to pass out afterwards. But that's about it.
Oh,
who was that?
That's Taco.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if that was Rugger or.
He's sensed that we're at the end of the show, and now he's here.
Okay.
Wondering what's going on.
I would bark for him, but he, of course, couldn't hear me.
No, I tried to let him listen earlier. He was not amused with the headphone because this one's the one that's got the weird static. Still.
Okay, well, crew, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. See you. Bye.